Ever worried that someday you might just up and disappear? There's nothing quite like a Sunday afternoon picnic in the park. The fresh air, the lazy hours sprawled out across a blanket, sharing company, food, drinks, and the beauty of the outdoors. The young man and his girlfriend spent their afternoon doing just that, enjoying a bit of slow living on a Sunday. Now, the sunset has streaked the sky with red and orange, and the air is beginning to cool to a less pleasant chill. It's time to pack up the remnants of the picnic and head on home. He carries the blanket, and she carries the basket, each of them keeping one hand free so they can still hold hands. They begin the walk back to the young man's apartment through the steadily emptying park. It's a familiar walk, one they've taken every Sunday for the past year that they've been together, and they take it at the same slow, easy pace as the picnic. There's no rush, not today. That's what Monday mornings are for. Right now, there's just the sunset, the park, and her hand in his. The young man catches a glimpse of a squirrel burying a nut in the dirt under a nearby tree. He goes to squeeze his girlfriend's hand to point out the adorable sight, but she pulls her hand out of his. She's changed course, walking toward a pair of benches, transfixed on something there. She asks in a strangely panicked voice whether he saw it. Strange, he can't spot anything out of the ordinary. The girlfriend insists, with unnerving intensity, that she saw some kind of strange light for a split second. Something that was gone as soon as it appeared, but left an indelible impression. The young man laughs uneasily. Something's wrong. Can't quite explain what it is. The hairs on the back of his neck are standing up. He tries to change the subject back to the squirrel. He turns to point out the squirrel again, but she remains fixated on whatever she can see that he can't. He can feel a knot forming in his stomach, a sense of dread, as his body screams at him to get out of there as fast as he can. He tries to soothe his overactive nervous system, to remind himself that there's no danger here. But just before he turns back to his girlfriend to suggest they hurry home, he hears a soft thud as something lands in the grass. He turns to see the picnic basket lying on the ground, dropped there all of a sudden. His girlfriend is nowhere to be found. He calls out to her, but there's no answer. It's as if she vanished into thin air. Terrified, the young man combs the park for any trace of her, but aside from the picnic basket, there's nothing. He calls the police and files a missing persons report, but there's little they can do. There are no signs of any foul play, no reason to believe anything has happened to her. She was simply there one moment and gone the next. The young man doesn't sleep a wink that night. He calls out of work the next day, determined to continue his search. If the police can't help him, he'll just have to get to the bottom of things on his own. He calls his girlfriend's parents, but they haven't heard from her since Saturday. Her friends haven't seen her or received so much as a text. She didn't go into work either. Desperate for answers, he returns to the park, pacing back and forth in the spot where she vanished by the benches. As he does, he hears a sudden sound that makes his heart leap into his throat. Her voice, just a whisper, as if her lips are mere inches from his ear. She calls his name. She asks him what happened. He doesn't know what to say. He whirls around, searching for her face, but she isn't there. Is it just his imagination? His grief causing him to hallucinate the voice he wants to hear the most? There it is again, her whispering to him, telling him that she loves him, that she misses him, that she can't feel her body anymore. The young man's knees buckle, and he collapses onto the grass, weeping. It's as if she's right there, but just out of reach. He can hear her, but he can't see her, can't touch her. He asks her what on earth happened. I don't know. I don't know where I am. I don't know what I am. I don't. Her voice grows weaker, fading to static. She's fading away, and he can't do anything to hold on to her. His eyes settle on the tree where he saw the squirrel the day before. The bark swirls in a pattern that, when he stares at it too long and lets his eyes unfocus, looks almost like her face. He reaches out, brushing his fingers against the bark. It isn't her. Of course it isn't her. He doesn't hear the voice again. Maybe it was never really there at all. But he can't shake the feeling that she's still there, somehow, somewhere, like she's just out of sight, on some other plane of existence he can't see. Sitting there, in the grass where she disappeared, he can feel her so clearly in his mind. He has a sudden, vivid memory of their first date. She spilled her coffee all over him, and they had to go back to her place so she could lend him a clean pair of pants. She was terrified he would be angry, but they laughed about it for the rest of the day instead. He can smell that coffee, feel that laughter bubbling in his throat. It's more vivid than a simple memory. It's her, somehow. Then, out of the corner of his eye, he spots something strange. A fluorescent, glowing light, radiating blue and yellow, twisting and turning in his peripheral vision. He turns toward it and climbs to his feet. He reaches out toward the shape, unable to stop himself, and then he's gone. The police would never discover what happened to the couple. How could they? They were victims of a force that the authorities could never hope to understand. This young man and his girlfriend encountered an anomaly known as SCP-7783. SCP-7783 is a semi-corporeal ontokinetic tetrahedral construct. Try to say that 5 times fast. The physicality of the anomaly is of dubious and spurious nature. As a facet of its containment, the anomaly is semanto-conceptually bound to the statement, contained within Unit 7783 of Site 196. SCP-7783 cannot always be perceived, and its perceptibility varies depending on the nature of the person attempting to perceive it. When effectively perceived, the anomaly emits a fluorescent glow on the blue-yellow gradient and maintains a fixed position in space no matter what kinetic force is used against it. SCP-7783 is extremely difficult to physically interact with, and can only be done using a complex series of actions known as semanto-conceptual interactivity. This is also the method through which SCP-7783 was contained. There are unfortunate consequences to effectively interacting with SCP-7783 on a physical level. Doing so causes abstraction, biological, conceptual, and ontokinetic in affected subjects. This tends to result in said subject transforming into an intangible conceptual sapience. I'll elaborate a bit more on that side effect in a moment. Individuals subject to the influence of SCP-7783 who are affiliated with the Foundation are referred to as Personnel-Associated Sapient Concepts, or PASCs. These sapient concepts still retain their higher cognitive functions, though they lack the biological functions associated with their original physical human forms. They are still capable of interacting with reality via cognitive subversive impression, or the limited and brief interference in the psychological and neurological activity of sentient and sapient beings in their vicinity. PASC presence can be detected through this brief interference, as well as an increase in parietal-like tendencies in those nearby. For those unfamiliar with the term, parietal-like tendencies refer to the tendency to see patterns and meaning in random stimuli. For example, seeing a face in a piece of burnt toast, observing a surprised facial expression in the shape of a faucet, or eyes in a wallpaper pattern. SCP-7783 was first discovered by senior researchers Dr. River Corys and Caden Powell while the two were off-duty. Some of the details of this initial discovery have been redacted from the official file due to potential concerns of containment breach, but the general shape of events is easy enough to determine. The two were taking a walk in the park together when they stumbled upon the anomaly. Dr. Corys took matters into his own hands by accident, performing a semanto-conceptual interaction with SCP-7783 without realizing what he was doing. 2 additional personnel were brought in, and the anomaly was successfully bound and contained. However, in the process, Dr. Corys' exposure proved to be too much, and he began the process of PASC transition. Caden Powell specifically requested that all interviews conducted between him and Dr. River Corys during the latter's transformation to be redacted from the official file on SCP-7783. Without those, we only have the general report to go on, but it does still provide an important glimpse into the transformation process. An hour after exposure to SCP-7783's effects, River displayed intact conceptual coherency and acute emotional distress. He seemed to be aware of what was happening to him, as well as his helplessness to stop it. His relationship to his physical form was still intact at this point, but he could feel just how temporary that state now was. After one day, River's conceptual coherency had gone from intact to intermittent. His physical form was still intact most of the time, but it was growing more and more difficult for him to communicate linguistically with Dr. Powell. 1 week later, River's conceptual coherency was described as spurious. There was an increase in cognitive subversive influence, and his biological functions were beginning to shut down as the physical body began to become less and less tangible. After 1 month, River's biological and physical form became entirely abstract. Dr. Powell observed an increase in parietaliac influence, seeing the lost man's face in everything he looked at, even when it could not possibly be there. The leaves on a nearby tree, the bark on its trunk, the ripples in a puddle of water, it all looked just a bit like him. But then Powell would blink and the image would be lost. What would later be regarded as standard PASE influence began to manifest in the area, as exhibited by the parietaliac effects, as well as a general psychic impression. It was most prevalent in the immediate vicinity of the disassociated fruiting body. 1 year after River first stumbled upon SCP-7783, he was entirely converted into an abstract entity. His physical form was lost, and subversive cognitive influences were observable. Even outside of PASE proximity, parietaliac influence persisted for associated individuals. The most affected was Dr. Powell, who continued to see River's face everywhere he looked. It became so prevalent for him that he sought a psych evaluation, but it was confirmed that he was not suffering from any mental illness or grief-induced hallucinations. This increase in pattern seeking by the brain and recognition of facial imagery and random visual stimuli was due to River's lingering PASE influence. After Dr. River Corries was lost to SCP-7783, Caden Powell took on the role of Provisional Containment Director. His number one priority was to determine methods that might allow for the reversal of SCP-7783's effects. As far as I can tell, no such methods have been uncovered yet. But Powell is persistent and has dedicated every ounce of his brainpower and every resource afforded by the SCP Foundation to uncovering a way to restore those lost to SCP-7783. During my research into SCP-7783, I was able to access an interview between Research Director Caden Powell and D-Class number 78990, conducted as part of a larger study on PASE cognitive subversive impressions. The purpose of this test was to induce an impression in order to open up a line of communication with PASE-01, formerly Dr. River Corries. If PASE-01 could influence the mind of an individual, perhaps that individual could act as a conduit of sorts, through which Powell and River could speak directly. Research Director Powell began the conversation with a polite greeting and the confirmation of D-78990's date of birth and full legal name. D-78990 confirmed his identity and asked what exactly they were doing during this experiment. Powell responded, "Well, essentially, I'm here to just talk to you for a bit, take some notes on your behavior and the like an evaluation of sorts." D-78990 shifted awkwardly in his seat and asked what they should talk about. Powell shrugged. The response shocked D-78990. "Aren't you leading the way?" Powell shrugged again, idly clicking his pen. His brow furrowed, his thoughts seeming to be far away. "I guess we could start with something like, say, a favorite color." "Favorite colors?" The D-Class couldn't help but laugh at that. "Favorite colors? I thought it'd be something more, I don't know, science-y?" Powell sighed. "Well, I'm mostly just monitoring your behavior, looking for any signs indicative of..." D-78990 sat up a bit more stiffly in his chair, anxiety spiking. "Signs of what? I got cancer or something?" "No," Powell shook his head. "Just... never mind. Why bring up cancer out of all things?" Now it was D-78990's turn to shrug. "I don't know. My dad died of it, a long time ago." "What type?" "Lung cancer, stage 4. The conversation felt less like a typical Foundation research interview and more like the makings of an awkward first date. The back and forth, the get-to-know-you dance of questions and half-hearted answers. Powell offered a verbal olive branch, an attempt to sympathize. "I knew someone whose dad passed from lung cancer." "Yeah, well, we probably saw it coming. He was a pack-a-day smoker for..." Powell interrupted. 22 years. D-78990's eyes widened in surprise. "Oh, nice guess. Yeah, 22. You know, I would have loved to work here," D-78990 remarked. "Really?" Powell raised an eyebrow. "What makes you say that?" From what I've seen, you don't have a research background. I wanted to go into medicine when I was younger, you know. Powell nodded. Would have been nice to work for a place like this, one with a real purpose, you know. Powell smiled weakly. Yeah, it definitely beats working in IT for a bunch of geriatrics. D78990 laughed at the remark, and Powell furrowed his brow, confused. River would have laughed at that joke. At the unexpected mention of his lost partner, Powell flinched. Yeah? D78990 nodded. He would have, yeah. Always hated working back in Loxy. Powell's eyes lit up with nostalgic recognition. Yeah, I remember. I remember it too clearly. D78990 laughed along with him, despite never having worked with Powell and Dr. Corey's in the past. Oh, definitely. It was crazy times, crazy times. Used to get so mad at that place. Get run up for the stupidest stuff, you and... Man, me and him. We really did. Chris always had a stick up his butt, though. Made it hell. He was too old to be working, that's why. Always decomposed at the desk. What was that one joke you made about his nose to me? D78990 was now speaking about Dr. Corey's memories in the first person. Which one? Powell asked. The night after D&B? Oh, the one about him looking 8 and 80 at the same time? D78990 cackled, throwing his head back. Please. Oh, God. River was crying laughing to that. That night was the most he had laughed in a long time then. Powell cracked a smile. Yeah, I remember that night. It was amazing, just making stupid jokes to each other, enjoying the time we had. Like all the time in the world was ours, huh? Made everything better. Life was perfect. Powell sighed. The neighbors didn't hear perfect, D78990 remarked. But the neighbors always complained about how loud we were. Powell shook his head. Well, I was loud. Noisy. That was something you liked about him. D78990 switched back and forth between third and first person, sometimes speaking about River, and other times speaking as if River was talking through him. I still remember his laughing. I still remember it all. D78990 smiled wistfully. He just didn't know how to take it seriously. Powell laughed at that, a smile breaking free from his mask of composure. Ha! Well, yeah, that's how he was. Always loud and bursting with energy. Made every situation colorful. Wonder if this River guy's still like that, D78990 remarked. Oh, he's still out there somewhere. Powell wiped the tear from his eye. Still the life of someone's party. Who is? Powell's stomach dropped. That was it then. The impression was gone. He sighed, composing himself. He wouldn't show his grief to this stranger. He forced a terse, polite smile. Never mind. And that was the conclusion of the interview. D78990 and Dr. Powell had never spoken prior to the interview, nor had D78990 ever previously met Dr. River Corys. Still, with some anomalous intervention, the two had been able to share a few memories of the man, and for a moment, he was still as he was, tangible, human, alive. But the moment was fleeting, as are all impressions of those changed by SCP-7783. As for containment procedures, the specific instructions for the semento-conceptual, or related to the inherent semantic information of a concept in reality, binding of SCP-7783, may only be accessed by a select few specialists. Any personnel assigned to the area are strictly prohibited from any hypothetical, speculative, fantastical, or intimate thought related to SCP-7783. I am only able to engage with the subject matter to this degree from a safe distance, and do not suggest you approach the area after learning this much about the anomaly. Due to its particular nature, amnestics are not sufficient to treat its impact on the human mind. Complete amnesticization of personnel regarding its existence, or lack of existence, would cause semento-conceptual unbinding. This would technically result in a containment breach. Such is the trouble with semi-corporeal constructs. Essentially, as long as it is known to be contained, the containment should hold. If you have a bit of a headache trying to wrap your mind around the whole situation, you are not alone. Though amnestics are not an acceptable solution to SCP-7783 and its influence, selective thought-blocking medications derived from Class C amnestics can be used to induce a sort of deliberate brain fog, a barrier that prevents an individual from thinking about SCP-7783 in any way that extends beyond particular containment-related tasks and day-to-day Foundation operations. Once upon a time, in the earliest days of my research, I may have said that I didn't believe in ghosts. As a man of science, I balked at the concept of that which I could not prove with empirical data. But now I have seen, encountered, and learned of too many inexplicable forces in this world to hold the same view. Perhaps the victims, and I do believe them to be victims, of SCP-7783 are not ghosts in the traditional sense. They did not die, after all. Their bodies simply dissolved. Their consciousness remained in some form. But is that not what we think of when we think of a ghost? The lingering impression of someone who was once flesh and blood? Take away the body, and what remains, whether you call it a spirit or a personnel-associated sapient concept, seems to meet the criteria. Dr. River Corey's is gone. At least, the part of him that could be seen, perceived, known, and loved. What remains is that brief impression, that glimpse of a memory, ever so brief, that laugh, once shared, never to be heard again. There may not be any rattling chains or creaks on the staircase, but SCP-7783 has created its fair share of what I feel compelled to call ghosts. Agree or disagree with my verbiage, I don't mind. Those left behind are still just as haunted.
Air travel used to be an event. People climbed aboard planes in their best dress, their finest suit, sat in seats with plenty of legroom, and really relished the opportunity to soar through the sky from destination to destination. Now, flying has become, ironically, pedestrian. Sure, some people still take it seriously and revel in the miracle of flight, but most treat it the same as riding a Greyhound bus. For the businessman, with his carefully packed carry-on and phone loaded with news podcasts to pass the time, that is exactly how it feels. Flying is a chore, one he wishes he didn't have to deal with. But sadly, he has no choice. Not if he wants to keep being the most valuable employee at his job, the one who never says no to a request from the boss. He's garnered a reputation as a real team player, which really means guy who's up for anything the company requests, no matter how boring, annoying, or exhausting. It's gotten him pretty far, and now that he's up for a promotion that would double his salary, he's certainly not going to give up the habit now. So here he is, stepping out of his taxi at the international airport, ready to hop on the longest flight of his life, 20 hours, non-stop, to Australia for a conference. No one else wanted to deal with the jet lag, the leg cramps, the claustrophobia. So, of course, the helpful-to-a-fault businessman volunteered. He rolls his small suitcase, precisely measured to meet the size standards for a carry-on, because he can't risk the airline misplacing his checked bag and stranding him at the conference with no suits, and walks into the airport. He's done this routine dozens of times before, every time pretty much the same. He has it down to a science, as quick and convenient as possible to minimize stress and make the journey go smoothly. He prints his boarding pass, drinks the dregs of his morning coffee, and tosses the cup, and heads to the pre-check line. No waiting in long security check lines for this guy. Wait a second. Why is the pre-check line blocked off? No. There's no pre-check available at this airport? The businessman lets out a heavy sigh, pinching the bridge of his nose for a moment as he gathers his thoughts. This is fine, this is fine. He can just go through the regular security line this time. What's the worst that could happen? It's not like he's running late. He's got plenty of time to make the flight, watch a few bad movies, get some sleep, and wake up on the other side of the world. Resigned to his fate, the businessman joins the security check line for ordinary Joes who didn't bother to spring for pre-check. This is fine, this is fine. The day is still going mostly according to plan. Or so he thinks. As the line inches along, the businessman spots more trouble up ahead. Oh great, they're putting in a new body scanner right now. He can see the engineer, whatever the title is, finishing the setup. No wonder the line is so long. This is the cherry on top of a deeply irritating Sunday. But it's too late to turn back now, not without risking his promotion, or even his job. Better just try to shrug it off and keep going. Maybe he'll get a candy bar when he reaches his gate. A little treat always helps ease the stress of travel. The line is moving at a steadier pace now, and the businessman can feel the tension in his chest easing up, his muscles loosening. Here we go, this is more like it. He slips his shoes off and holds them in his hands, standing in line in his socks. He might look a little silly, but it's the most efficient way to get through security. After what feels like an eternity, it's his turn to go through the security checkpoint. With a self-satisfied smile, he places his shoes in a bin next to his carry-on bag and drops them both on the conveyor belt. One of the TSA agents waves him on, beckoning him to step into the body scanner. He assumes the position, hands over his head, and waits for the queue to step through to the other side. But the queue doesn't come. The TSA agent holds up a hand, gesturing for the businessman to stay where he is. He tries to ask about what could be causing the holdup, but no one answers him. Must be a malfunction with the machine. Perfect. He lets out another heavy sigh. Then, just behind his right ear, he hears a voice.
Rough day, buddy.
The businessman glances over his shoulder, expecting to see a TSA agent standing there. But there's no one. Has the stress of the worst day he's ever had at the airport driven him to hallucinate? He hears it again.
Hey, buddy, you there? Sounds like a rough day.
Maybe there's a speaker embedded in the scanner somewhere for some reason. Just been kinda stressful. I'll feel better when I get on my flight.
Oh, you're traveling. That's fun. Where to?
Australia. It's for this work thing. I'm not especially excited about it, but the boss will love it, so...
Ha! I heard that, my friend. Say, could you do me a favor?
I guess so?
Could you tell me where I am? I just woke up and I can't see anything. Can't really feel anything either. It's all just darkness. And it's kind of freaking me out here.
The businessman scans the area, but no one appears to be paying attention. No one seems to hear the voice. Is that because it's lost in the din of airport chatter? Or because it's all in his head? We're at the airport.
Airport? How do I get to the airport? Listen, buddy. I need you to help get me out of here. My wife, my daughter, they'll be looking for me. I don't know how long I've been gone. I need to get home. Can you help me?
Privately, the businessman thinks that he really doesn't have time for this, but out loud he says, "Sure. It's just that I don't really know where you actually are, or how you're talking to me through this scanner thing."
What do you mean? I'm right here. Talking out of my mouth. I'm not... What the hell are you talking about?
The businessman is beginning to lose his patience. Something about this situation is just not right. No one should be talking to him through the broken security scanner. The TSA should be letting him through, and he should be sitting at his gate right now. His built-up grievances spill out through his mouth. "I don't have time for this," he shouts. The TSA agent turns to look at him. "I promise, sir, we're working to fix the issue as fast as we can. There's no need to shout," she says. The voice in the scanner was speaking in a hushed tone before, a conspiratorial whisper, but now it's growing louder, more desperate.
You gotta help me, please. My family. I need to get to my family. Why can't I see? Why can't I move? It hurts. It hurts. Don't you understand, you idiot? It hurts.
These words are shouted directly into the businessman's ear. "Stop! Just stop! Stop yelling at me!" Several TSA agents rush over to inspect the businessman, steadying him and gently guiding his hands away from his ears. They ask him if he's feeling all right, if they need to call someone for him. The businessman snaps, shouting that the scanner is broken, and he can hear a voice inside and something is very, very wrong. Well, unfortunately for the businessman, he looks more than a little suspicious now, and one security officer pulls him aside, leading him to a small nearby room for a chat. All the while, the businessman insists that the scanner was talking to him, and that he's not crazy. He won't be leaving that interrogation room anytime soon. Unfortunately for the businessman, he will not be making that flight to Australia. Meanwhile, the scanner is causing interference with the other technology at the checkpoint. The agents are scrambling to solve the problem, to keep the line moving while their colleague addresses an apparent mental health crisis nearby. The line keeps moving, and more impatient passengers walk through the scanner. Just like the businessman before them, they can hear that voice, whispering hushed pleas that turn into anguished shouts. The same male voice, over and over again, begging for answers, begging for help. Someone deeply distressed is speaking through the scanner, and no one can figure out why. One elderly woman breaks down in tears as the voice angrily swears at her. A little girl screams in terror at the sudden sound. A man tries to argue with the voice, the two shouting over each other with increasing fervor. Soon, the voice grows loud enough that the TSA agents can't ignore it. Much to the dismay of the passengers that haven't made it through yet, they close down the line. Slowly, one TSA agent approaches the scanner. "Hello?" she calls out. She feels silly doing it. There's no way someone is using the scanner as a communication device. The technology doesn't work like that. But then, clear as a bell, she hears the response.
Hello? You can help me? Or do I need to keep screaming for someone to listen?
No doubt about it, that is a person. A very distressed person. "How are you speaking to me right now, sir?"
With my mouth. What are you, stupid? I don't want any trouble. Please, just let me go or I'm gonna lose it. I just want to go home. What is this, some kind of kidnapping thing? Did you drug me?
Sir, please, we can't help you if you don't tell us how you're speaking through the machine.
There's no goddamn machine. There's just me. Just me. Me.
The voice begins to sob in frustration, and the TSA agent feels a sudden wave of inexplicable nausea sweep through her body. There's no speaker on the machine, nowhere for a voice to emanate from. There's only one solution in sight. They need to take this thing apart. Something is very, very wrong with it. She calls over several of her colleagues, and they begin to fiddle with the machine's outer shell, attempting to loosen and remove it. As they do, a blood-curdling scream rips through the air.
Stop! Please, stop! Whatever you want, I'll do it. Just stop, please!
She signals for the others to stop what they're doing, and the screaming ceases. When the voice speaks again, it sounds defeated, exhausted.
What do you want from me? Is it money? I don't have much, but if you let me go, I'll give you whatever I can. Please. My daughter just turned 5. I just want to see her again.
There was the sound of sobbing again. Somehow, when they tried to open the machine, it hurt the man speaking through it. This just gets weirder and weirder. Meanwhile, the interrogator in the nearby room receives word that the businessman is not, in fact, having a mental health crisis. He really did hear someone speaking through the scanner, someone that everyone can now hear. Whoever this mysterious man is, he will not listen to anyone, will not explain where he is or how he got there. He claims that he was having an ordinary day, lost consciousness, and woke up in total darkness. By the time the businessman is released, however, he has already missed his flight to Australia. That does it. That's the straw that breaks the camel's back. He marches back over to the body scanner, shoving TSA agents out of the way as he goes. He begins kicking at the scanner, shouting a stream of curses and epithets at the one who caused him to miss his very important flight, the one who may have cost him his promotion. Man or machine, it doesn't matter. This thing is his enemy now. The disembodied voice returns the shouts in kind, warning the businessman to back off, or he may not like what comes next. "I'm warning you." The businessman laughs derisively, egging on the voice inside the scanner. "Oh yeah? What are you gonna do?" The businessman soon gets his answer, though he won't live to understand what it meant. As the voice screams, louder than anyone has heard it be so far, the businessman collapses to the ground. His body convulses, and his eyes roll back. A seizure. The TSA agents attempt to interfere, but as they approach the scanner, they too collapse to the ground. Some are seizing, others are just unconscious. They don't know it, but all of them are suffering from extreme radiation poisoning. The crowd of passengers waiting to go through security breaks apart, people scattering every which way in search of help or a quick exit. In the next 48 hours, everyone who collapsed will be dead. After 2 more weeks, several of the bystanders will be dead too, all because of the one faulty scanner and the strange voice speaking from inside. Before the story can make the news, it is suppressed by SCP Foundation agents embedded in the media. All living witnesses are given amnestics, and the airport is temporarily closed. The cover story is an attempted terrorist attack, and people are all too quick to eat it up. No one will ever know the truth of what happened, or the nature of the device that would become known as SCP-1966. SCP-1966 is a backscatter X-ray device built by a redacted engineering group sometime in the 2000s. It is approximately 3 meters by 4 meters by 4 meters in size. It was purchased by the American Transportation Security Administration for use in an international airport. Passive scans of SCP-1966 reveal no discernible difference between the internal structure of this scanner and other body scanners with the same design. However, it is no ordinary scanner. Shortly after the scanner was placed in its designated airport, it began to emit the sound of a human male voice. So far, the Foundation has been unable to determine where the voice originates from within the structure of the scanner. The voice responds to speech and other auditory stimuli in the vicinity of SCP-1966 and appears to belong to a sentient consciousness that resides within the scanner. It will continue to speak whether or not it is connected to a power source. In conversations with Foundation staff, SCP-1966 has claimed to be an insurance salesman from London, Ontario, by the name of Mr. J. It remembers being at its daughter's 5th birthday party, which, coincidentally, occurred the day before the scanner was placed at the airport. After the party, it reports becoming blind and unconscious. According to SCP-1966, it cannot see or experience any other senses other than hearing, the feeling of pain when the scanner is tampered with, and a sense of vibrations in the vicinity. It also appears to know when it is being moved, and when someone is attempting to open its outer casing. When the casing is interfered with, it tends to respond by saying,
"Ouch!"
and
"Stop that!"
in terms of the tone of conversation, SCP-1966 can be friendly, or it can be angry to the point of being verbally abusive. Whenever SCP-1966 becomes especially upset, it begins to emit a higher level of ionizing radiation, with levels sometimes spiking to the point of causing immediate fatalities, as well as delayed deaths that occur within 2 weeks of exposure. In order to minimize casualties, it is important that SCP-1966 be kept calm. To this end, Protocol Psi-1966-A was developed. This protocol set a series of rules for Foundation staff to keep in mind while interacting with SCP-1966. First, the entity must always be referred to by the name it gave, Mr. J. If SCP-1966 makes any claims about its memories or identity, they must be accepted without argument or contradiction. Personnel should never reference the Foundation, SCP-1966's current form, its acquisition and history, or where it is being contained. If SCP-1966 expresses any self-destructive urges or sentiments, the on-site director must immediately be notified. Junior staff are not considered qualified to handle this scenario, and swift intervention is necessary to prevent any needless radiation poisoning or casualties. If SCP-1966 asks where it is, or expresses concern about its environment, it should be told that it is currently in the long-term care ward of a Toronto hospital, and that it suffered brain trauma during a car accident. If it asks to speak to its wife or daughter, the only approved response is, "You know you can't talk to them now." This is in reference to the cover story provided to SCP-1966, which is that its wife and daughter died in the same car accident. However, stating this plainly will exacerbate the entity's stress levels and may prove dangerous, so a gentle reminder and correction is preferable. Approximately a year after bringing SCP-1966 into custody, the Foundation tracked down a Mr. J, a London, Ontario-based insurance salesman with a wife and daughter. When interviewed under the guise of a survey, his memories and opinions matched those of SCP-1966 up until the date it was first placed in the airport. He was then observed for 3 years, but nothing anomalous about the man was ever detected. For all intents and purposes, he is a perfectly ordinary, unexceptional man. The most unusual thing about Mr. J is that he has, as far as the Foundation can ascertain, never had contact with SCP-1966. In fact, he has never even set foot in the airport where SCP-1966 was previously in use. Somehow, SCP-1966 has developed an imprint of Mr. J's consciousness, but how exactly that occurred is beyond my understanding. SCP-1966 must be kept in a dedicated bunker 2 kilometers underground. The bunker must have 10-meter thick reinforced concrete walls with an additional 1 meter of radiation shielding in order to prevent any radiation from leaking into the surrounding environment. To further reduce this risk, the location of its bunker must be at least 100 kilometers away from any major cities or population-dense areas, as well as Foundation sites. The current location of SCP-1966's bunker is classified and provided only to those who have received special clearance. The monitoring station for SCP-1966 must be permanently manned by at least 5 Foundation staff with Level 2 clearance or higher. The on-site director for the bunker must have Level 4 clearance and be a certified psychologist. No one may interact with SCP-1966 without the approval of this on-site director, and any interaction with SCP-1966 must conform to Protocol Psi-1966-A. The tale of SCP-1966 has been difficult for me to shake. It is far from the most bizarre anomaly I've researched, or the most dangerous, but there is a compelling tragedy to it. A machine, built only to assist with airport security, found itself suddenly cursed with a consciousness that was not its own. Nothing in the world will convince SCP-1966 that it is not a Canadian family man. Its mind is always occupied by thoughts and memories of a life it will never be able to live. A life that, no matter how real and personal it feels, never belonged to it in the first place. Can any of us be certain we are not suffering from the same folly? How can we be sure that our memories, our names, our very identities, are our own? The notion of self is a fragile thing, and SCP-1966 serves as an unsettling reminder that, no matter how secure we feel about who we are, outside observers may be able to see truths about us that we can never hope to comprehend. I never expected to feel quite so existential over an X-ray scanner. A haunted house. It seems like a fun idea for a date, although the model is the type to jump at everything. He knows everyone in the fake blood and clown makeup are just out-of-work actors or students looking to make some easy money, but any loud screams are enough to get him leaping out of his own skin. Then again, he expects that's part of his date's plan. Get him scared so he seeks shelter in his arms. It's quite sweet, actually. So he agrees. The place is hardly the stuff of nightmares. In fact, it's all pretty homesprung, and being there with company makes it easier to giggle at all the half-baked attempts to incite scares. The distinctly ketchup-scented blood stains are a particular highlight that leaves the model and his date in stitches. Then they spot a hall of mirrors and can't resist heading inside. It's even cheaper than they're expecting. Multiple standing mirrors that seem to have been taken straight out of people's homes and set up in an easy-to-navigate maze. Still, it ends up being fun for the most part, until the model spots something in his reflection in one of the mirrors. A tiny blemish. That wasn't there yesterday, and he's certain of it. His whole job is centered around how he looks. But he tries to brush it off. After all, even he gets insecure about his appearance from time to time. It happens to everyone. But in the next mirror, it seems to look even worse. Maybe it's the lighting, he thinks. Then he starts to worry. Has his date noticed? It plays on his mind, and the rest of the way through the hall of mirrors, he avoids looking at his reflection. A few days later, and he's sitting in the makeup chair, getting ready for a photo shoot. He doesn't dare open his eyes, trusting the makeup artists to cover up the things he's been seeing on his face every time he looks in the mirror. He's tried to cancel the shoot, calling his manager and telling her that he just can't be on camera right now. But she comes racing over to his apartment to get a look at him for herself and tells him she can't see anything wrong, to just get over himself and not be a diva. He tries to settle into the familiarity of the photo shoot. The outfit changes, the rapid flashing of the cameras, while he tries desperately not to let his concern show on his face. A few times it slips out, the cameraman telling him to look less worried. It's hard to be, especially with how he thinks he must look. Seeing the photos afterwards, it's even worse than he thought. It barely looks like him. The person in the pictures is unrecognizable to the model. He argues with the cameraman and manager, telling them they need to Photoshop the images. Neither of them can see what's wrong with them. A few more days pass, and the model is cowering in his apartment. The thing he sees in the mirror doesn't look like him anymore. He doesn't even look human. He's seen it everywhere. Looking back at him in the glass pane of windows, out of the corner of his eye in the TV, shuffling in the place where his own reflection should be. It creeps into every photo, takes his place, standing in the spots he's supposed to be. The model's even started having nightmares about seeing whatever he's become. There's something very wrong with all this, and it all started in that hall of mirrors. Held in a secure storage locker at Site 19, SCP-4682 is to remain wrapped in an opaque material at all times, in accordance with its special containment procedures. Under no circumstances are any personnel permitted to view SCP-4682 directly. If they do, then they likely won't like what they see. SCP-4682 is, or at least appears to be, a common silver and glass mirror. Upon closer inspection, there appears to be nothing immediately or obviously anomalous about the mirror, even down to having been constructed with entirely ordinary materials. The anomalous properties of SCP-4682 will only manifest from the point a person observes their own reflection within the mirror itself, after which point, any individual that is subjected to the effects of SCP-4682 must avoid any and all reflective surfaces effective immediately after looking at SCP-4682. An affected individual will be advised by the Foundation to avoid being depicted in any and all visual mediums, including never having their picture taken or allowing themselves to be recorded on video, either through the use of digital or film cameras. Psychologists working for the firm Schuyler and Crane Psychiatry, a front for the SCP Foundation's Psychological Research and Analysis Department, will conduct therapy sessions with affected individuals on a monthly to weekly schedule, determined on a case-by-case basis, depending on the severity of the side effects they experience after looking directly at SCP-4682. This, of course, leaves the lingering question of what exactly happens when a person observes their reflection in SCP-4682. Do they find themselves trapped in an inescapable mirror dimension? Does it impart an anomalous effect that removes them from photographs, leading them to question their own sanity and existence? Not quite, but it's arguably just as cruel. Any human being that observes their own reflection on SCP-4682's surface will experience a permanent and irreversible shift in their perception. Whenever viewing themselves in SCP-4682, they will immediately notice physical differences that are not actually present on their real face or body, but they only appear in the anomalous mirror. These have been known to include a mix of the following discrepancies in reflections. For one, they might perceive themselves as having incorrect proportions of the face, such as their eyes being further apart or closer together than they are in reality. This can also extend to the proportions of the rest of their body too, as the reflection might depict them as being inaccurately taller or shorter than they actually are, or show them having a significantly different body mass or shape. Many of the D-Class test subjects deployed during experimentation with SCP-4682 have also reported seeing various blemishes and skin conditions on the mirror's inaccurate reflections, from acne to facial scars, eczema to even conditions as severe as first-degree burns, all of which are not present on the test subjects' actual faces. Dental hygiene of the test subjects is often depicted as being much worse in their SCP-4682 reflection than it is in real life, with yellowed or rotting teeth appearing, as well as cavities that do not correspond with the subject's actual dental records. Reflected in SCP-4682 are also often the addition of facial features that are considered, at least by conventional standards, to be unattractive. Some test subjects have reported seeing themselves sporting unibrows or uneven facial hair regardless of gender. The same also further extends to the rest of their body, with numerous instances of D-Class seeing themselves with excessive body hair that isn't present outside of the reflection. Following a person's direct exposure to the mirror's surface, the effect of SCP-4682 will become unavoidable. While not possible for anyone else to observe any noticeable change in said person, they themselves will notice the perceived imperfections in their appearance and other reflective surfaces. This extends not only to conventional non-anomalous mirrors, but also to television, computer, or cell phone screens, windows, and other glass surfaces, as well as anything that is polished sufficiently enough to produce a reflection. Additionally, these inaccurate anomalous differences to an affected person's appearance will be present in any photographs or video footage of them, meaning that there is virtually no proven way to convince them that these imperfections are actually present beyond pointing this out. The differences to a person's appearance are not present when they are viewed by others, or when they view themselves with the naked eye. However, naturally, it will be impossible for them to view their own face without the assistance of a reflective surface, which will always depict them as having inaccurate imperfections that are not actually physically present. As if triggering this perceptual shift wasn't bad enough, SCP-4682's anomalous effect is also cumulative, as in, it only gets worse every time a person sees themselves again. When viewing their reflection after exposure to SCP-4682, whether using the anomalous mirror, a normal one, or any other method, another new imperfection will seemingly have appeared. Any reflective surface or method of visual recording around them will appear to make more and more differences present in their appearance. Anyone around that observes the altered reflection of the affected person, particularly on a surface or through photographs, will also be able to view the same imperfections that they perceive. However, they will be aware that these are not actually present when they view the person directly. There is currently no known way to circumvent or cure the perceptual anomaly caused by SCP-4682 or negate the lasting effect of it. Even the administering of memory-altering amnestics have no effect, as even if an affected subject forgets what they originally saw in SCP-4682, or even forgets the moment they looked into it to begin with, in some cases, using amnestics to treat exposure to SCP-4682's anomalous perceptual alteration can irreparably affect a person's view of themselves. One member of D-Class that was given amnestics after viewing SCP-4682 began believing the imperfections they saw in their reflection had always been part of their natural appearance. For a time, this led to a degree of acceptance in this individual. Being unable to recall their encounter with SCP-4682 meant they had no inclination that their reflection had previously appeared any differently before being altered by the mirror,
However, they began to notice additional inaccuracies when subsequently viewing their reflection in the mirror above the faucet within their living quarters at the Foundation. The cumulative nature of SCP-4682 perceptual anomaly gradually led to this affected D-Class developing outlandish theories about their own identity. One such train of thought revolved around the belief that the Foundation had replaced their real self with some kind of clone, believing themselves to be a replica of the original, inaccurately mimicking their appearance and possessing all their memories. After being dissuaded of this belief by Foundation psychiatrists, the affected D-Class later adopted a new theory that the Foundation had been intentionally applying sophisticated visual effects makeup and prosthetics to his face and body each day until he noticed. When they raised this theory with his fellow D-Class personnel, many dismissed it, saying that they looked no different from when they'd first arrived in Foundation custody. This then led to a growing mistrust of other members of D-Class. The affected subject believing that those around them were secretly privy to the continuing changes they noticed in their reflection, and had been instructed to lie by the Foundation. Gradually, the SCP-4682 affected D-Class developed an uncontrollable paranoia towards all Foundation staff. Unbeknownst to anyone else at Site-19, they began to believe the SCP Foundation had intentionally stolen their face and was deliberately changing their appearance every day as some means of sadistic, psychological torture. At one point, the fact that this had been the side effect of looking at an anomalous mirror was revealed by their appointed psychologist, but this explanation was rejected by the D-Class as being nothing more than an attempt by the Foundation to mislead them. Having been drawing up an escape plan in secret, the affected individual eventually experienced a psychotic break and shattered the mirror in their holding cell, both to prevent them from being able to observe the continuously worsening changes in their reflection, and in order to hide one of the sharper fragments of glass on their person, in order to use it as a makeshift weapon. During recreational time, the D-Class caught a member of Foundation security by surprise and took them hostage, threatening their safety with the shard of the mirror. Holding it to the throat of their hostage, the D-Class was still able to catch momentary glimpses of their altered reflection in the glass. Additional Foundation security officers attempted to intervene, but could not get close enough to the D-Class without risking potential harm to their captured colleague. When asked by officers attempting to peacefully negotiate, the SCP-4682 affected D-Class made continuous requests for the Foundation to return their real face. Further attempts were made to explain the effects of SCP-4682 to the D-Class. However, they once again refused to believe what they were being told. Growing more and more agitated, witnesses state that the affected individual caught another glimpse of themselves reflected in one of the facility's tinted windows. Upon seeing further alterations to their reflection, they became enraged and released their hostage before attempting something drastic with the mirror shard to get rid of this false face. They were subsequently transferred to the medical wing of Site-19, where they remained alive but unconscious for several weeks. As a form of compensation for the mental anguish imposed on them by being made to look at SCP-4682 and then being forced to forget about it, the Foundation offered to perform facial reconstruction surgery on the affected D-Class, as well as applying skin grafts to repair some of the lasting facial trauma. However, the D-Class instead refused, opting to keep their face wrapped in bandages and sterile wound dressing indefinitely, requesting that the Foundation instead develop some method of preventing them from ever seeing their reflection again. At present, there are several proposals to re-engineer the technology behind the scramble goggles to serve this purpose. One includes developing electronic contact lenses that either blur or completely remove an individual's reflection from their vision in real time. However, these proposals are still awaiting review and approval by Foundation higher-ups. A number of other D-Class personnel used during testing of the anomalous mirror have reported suffering major psychological difficulty after witnessing their altered reflections. In particular, those who have seen the cumulative effects of multiple imperfections being added thanks to SCP-4682. Many report being unable to recall what they originally looked like before seeing the inaccurate changes in their reflections, with some even developing severe depression, anxiety, and insecurity connected to their appearance. In addition to this, there have been numerous documented cases of test subjects suffering from severe body dysmorphia following testing with the object. Given that this is one of the more common outcomes that can be caused by looking at SCP-4682, and in order to discourage personnel from doing so, the anomalous mirror is often widely referred to simply as the body dysmorphia mirror. The Foundation first encountered the mirror while investigating a missing persons case in Broken Bow, Oklahoma. A civilian, referred to simply as Rob, had reported to police that his boyfriend had been out of contact for a concerning amount of time, and an investigation into his whereabouts was subsequently launched. While this would typically be solely the concern of local law enforcement, a member of an SCP Foundation mobile task force happened to be operating undercover within the area's police force. This agent belonged to MTF Iota-10. Members of this task force do not strictly operate as a cohesive unit, but are instead a number of undercover operatives spread out across various international, federal, and local law enforcement agencies. This includes the Central Intelligence Agency, Federal Bureau of Investigation, Ministry of Intelligence, and various police departments. The primary goal of this mobile task force is transferring potentially anomalous evidence recovered during investigations into Foundation hands, as well as reporting any anomalies discovered in connection to criminal acts to the SCP Foundation. From there, they then allow Foundation response or containment teams to step in and take over jurisdiction of these cases from local law enforcement or federal agencies. This has led to MTF Iota-10 being more colloquially known by their nickname, the Damn Feds. One of these damn feds within the local Oklahoma Police Department investigating the disappearance of Rob's missing boyfriend was present when they searched his apartment. Immediately, this embedded Foundation operative noticed something was wrong. All of the mirrors, screens, windows, every reflective surface in the apartment seemed to have been shattered or painted over, except for one, SCP-4682, which was laying intact on the carpet of the bedroom. Even worse, the cause of the boyfriend's disappearance quickly became apparent upon the discovery of a mixture of Jack Daniels and cough medicine next to a body with a note. Believing the apartment to have been the site of a potential anomalous incursion, the undercover MTF Iota-10 operative contacted his superiors at the SCP Foundation and requested that members of Mobile Task Force Eta-10 be dispatched to assess the situation. The operative was commended for making an accurate assessment of the situation, especially in requesting MTF Eta-10, otherwise known as See No Evil. Of all the Foundation's numerous deployable task forces, Eta-10 specializes in the investigation, acquisition, and containment of anomalies that cause visual cognition hazards or mimetic effects. In short, anything that cannot or should not be directly observed in order to be safely handled. Through the use of anomalous means available to only MTF Eta-10, they were able to safely secure SCP-4682 and bring it to Foundation containment. Also recovered from the scene in the apartment was the note left by Rob's boyfriend. This note revealed little about how he had come to have SCP-4682 in his possession, nor shed any light on its origins, or when he first began to notice its anomalous effects. However, it did contain insights as to how the mirror functioned through the harrowing testimony of the man who had been found dead alongside it. He had reportedly started seeing his altered reflection more frequently, so much so that it had started affecting his day-to-day life. He recalled accidentally colliding with his neighbor's car after he hadn't been using his vehicle's rearview mirror because he couldn't stand the sight of his own eyes looking back at him. It had seemingly become so bad that he had smashed the bathroom mirror in his apartment, unable to look into it for more than a second. However, still being able to see himself in the broken fragments, he tried throwing them away, only to still catch his inaccurate reflection on the metallic surface of his dishwasher. Every time a reflective surface showed imperfections on his face thanks to SCP-4682, he destroyed it, smashing his phone when he saw his reflection in the glass screen protector. According to his note, he even took a hammer to a hand mirror that Rob had given him as a gift, destroying it so thoroughly that there were only tiny shards and splinters of glass left. And he could still see himself in those, too. Desperation had long since set in, and he was considering somehow inducing blindness in himself, before eventually deciding that there was only one way to be rid of the sight of his own face for good. He had been seeing himself with crooked teeth and chewed fingernails, and had started to believe that Rob's feelings had enabled him to look at his boyfriend with rose-tinted glasses. He felt unworthy of his partner's love, and felt that Rob deserved better, unaware that the imperfections he was seeing in himself weren't really there, and had only appeared as a result of looking into SCP-4682. This tragic outcome of the effects of the body dysmorphia mirror are a large part of the reason that the SCP Foundation have long since discontinued testing with it, opting to keep it in storage where it can no longer hurt the way people look at themselves.
The car screeches to a halt, the door swings open, and the doctor tumbles out. He lands on his hands and knees in the dirt and throws up the few remaining drops of stomach acid left in his system. He's put his hand in something sticky. He can feel an insect wriggling under his palm. Behind him, the door slams, and a pair of boots walk around to his side of the car. The translator accompanying him does not offer a hand to help him up. It had been a long car journey with many similar stops. Fortunately, this was the last. The doctor gingerly gets to his feet and takes in his surroundings. He finds himself in a small village hidden amongst thick trees. He's not sure what time it is anymore. The flights, time zones, and car journeys wrought havoc on his circadian rhythms. He knows he is in China, somewhere very remote and very rural. He'd tried to look it up with the maps on his phone during the journey, but he'd lost signal a long time ago. One thing is clear, however. It is the middle of the night. The car's headlights are the only light source in the village. No one comes out to greet them. The doctor brushes himself off and turns to his translator. The man nods towards a small hut near the back of the village, just beyond the headlight's reach. His translator is a man of few words, both ironic and deeply unhelpful. The doctor does not know a word of Mandarin himself. In silence, the two men approach the hut. The doctor reaches out to knock, but his translator has already pushed the door open. Inside, there is just the dim light of a lamp. Almost everything is covered in shadow. It is almost dark enough that they can't see the cobwebs. Almost. Silken strings drape themselves over every surface, wall, and item in the little hut. It's impossible in places to even see what item of furniture is hiding beneath all of the webs. The translator reaches out to touch one of the webs in fascination, but the doctor grabs his hand, shaking his head. He hands the translator a face mask and a pair of disposable gloves. Annoyed, the translator takes them, but does not put them straight on, choosing instead to walk deeper into the hut. After a second, the doctor follows, only he can't help the feeling that something's not right. Something's missing. "Here," says the translator. It is the first word he's said in hours. He's standing behind a little curtain looking down at something, as the doctor joins him there and almost retches from the stench. Lying in the bed is an emaciated man. He looks like he hasn't eaten in days. His wrists and ankles are bound tightly to the bed, so tightly, in fact, that his circulation has been cut off. The doctor can see right away the telltale signs of gangrene spreading across his palms. But they're too late. The man isn't moving. His bony chest isn't rising or falling. Worst of all, he must have been dead for a while now. There are sheets of spiderwebs draped over his sallow skin, like some kind of deathly funeral shroud. The translator mutters something in Mandarin. It doesn't take a PhD to pick up on the evident frustration in his voice. A whole night of driving out to the middle of nowhere for nothing. The translator kicks over a wooden stool. The sound is muffled by the thick layer of cobwebs as he storms out of the hut. But something is wrong here. The doctor can't walk out just yet. Toxicology. That's his field. Poisons, toxins, infections, bites. But that's the thing. There are no bites anywhere on this man's body. Head to toe, under the layer of spider silk, there are no welts, bruises, or puncture marks. The only darkened veins standing out are on his fingertips, as they rot away from stagnant blood. Nothing to do with poisons. But there's something else, too. A hut holding a dead body, full of spiders' webs, but yet, no spiders. A scream fills the hut. The bed rocks violently. The doctor looks down in horror to see the dead man is not as dead as he'd appeared. He thrashes this way and that, straining against the ties on his limbs. The doctor calls out for the translator, who appears at his side almost immediately. The translator shouts something in Mandarin, trying to be heard over the dying man's screams, but it's no use. The man throws his head this way and that, trying to bash his chin into his own chest or hit the top of his skull against the nearest wall. It is no use. The man opens cloudy eyes that stare wildly around the room, searching for something, anything that could help him break free from his restraints. Without thinking, the doctor grabs the man's head and holds it steady. He peers into the man's weeping eyes. Bizarre. If he didn't know better, he'd say they almost looked as if they had spiders' webs built up beneath the eyelids, clouding out the man's windows to see the world. Small, silvery balls of thick liquid gather in the corners of them, too dense, too murky to be tears. From somewhere beneath the haze, the man's pupils find the doctor's. In an instant, his body falls still. It is almost as if he relaxed, completely. A guttural murmur comes from the man's throat. The doctor looks to the translator for help. "Free me." The doctor looks down at his patient. This is the part of medicine he had always hated the most. At what point do you let someone go? At what point do you say it's too late? Is it even right for him to make that decision? Looking at the man lying in front of him, a wave of sadness washes over him. His initial assessment had been right. It is too late. Even if he could treat the gangrene in the man's limbs with amputation, there's still starvation and dehydration to deal with. And then the apparent venom from the spiders. Except, there are no signs of venom. Perhaps it isn't too late after all. With the right treatment, there may be a chance to... The man's wrist snaps, becoming a loose glove of broken bone that's easily pulled from the restraint. A foul stench of exposed, rotten flesh hits the doctor like a slap in the face. He reels back in horror as the man pulls his other decimated hand free too. Unbound by his bed, the man lets out an animalistic roar. Sitting up in the bed, he tips his head back and starts pounding at it with what is left of his hands. Jagged wrist bones, barely housed by paper-thin skin, slam repeatedly into his forehead, harder and harder with each hit. The doctor is frozen to the spot, staring as the man smashes his own head. Skin splits, revealing white bone. Bone cracks. Then, with one last effort that seems to take every remaining morsel of the man's energy, he turns and crunches his fractured skull against the wall, caving the front half of his head in like a deflated basketball. Silence, more terrifying than any sound, fills the hut. The doctor stares at the body. An almost comical image pops into his head. The head looks like just a red plastic bag that someone had left on the floor, full of shards of broken pottery. He almost smiles. But then, the spiders appear. Just one at first, then 10, then a stream, then an eruption, spewing out of the gaps in the man's head like water shooting out of a collapsing dam. The tiny pink spiders flood the room, shooting up the walls into every crack and crevice, writhing and rippling around their feet. That breaks the doctor's paralysis. He and the translator sprint for the door. They crash through it and cover the length of the village in seconds. Grabbing the door handles, they haul themselves up into the 4x4. The translator slams it into reverse and almost crashes into a tree as he turns them around and back onto the dirt trail. They drive all through the night, not talking. The doctor gets control of his breathing, but his heart does not stop hammering the whole time. He cannot shake the images that fill his head. Spiders. Tiny pink spiders. Everywhere. The sun is just rising when the driver suddenly pulls over sharply. His eyes are wide, his face deathly pale. He doesn't say a word as he sits forward, reaches down the back of his shirt, and pulls out one tiny pink spider. The doctor yells in shock and hurriedly grabs a sample pot for the man to throw the spider into. The two men sit there in the front of the car in the warm morning light, staring through the glass at the Arachnid. It looks soft. That's the most bizarre thing about it. Rather than having a hard, dark exoskeleton like other spiders, this one looks fleshy. No, that's not quite right. It looks fatty. Looks squishy, like parts of the body that get exposed in traumatic crashes. Wrinkles and folds of pink, mushy cells with fatty deposits. Except it cannot be made from those kinds of things. It's a spider. As they watch, the spider seems to recognize their attention. It stands up on its back 4 legs and raises the remaining ones in the air. It looks almost as if it is doing some kind of mating dance for them. It turns its back to them, revealing a pattern of brightly colored dots across its abdomen. The doctor drags his eyes away from the dance. The sun is gone. Night has fallen again. His stomach stabs at him in hunger. But that can't be right. It was sunrise only a few seconds ago. The headache had started as he sat down on his flight. Now, 5 hours in and somewhere over an ocean, he knows he is not going to sleep tonight. He can't get the image of all those spiders out of his mind. He needs to report this. And he will, definitely. But not yet. A spider crawls up the seat in front of him. His heart stops, and he sits back violently in his seat, eyes wide. On the floor of the plane, pink spiders everywhere. They're not real. They're not real, just his imagination. He needs some rest. That's what he needs. He'll fly home, wait for the headache to pass. Then he can call someone. But right now, he just feels too groggy to do any of that. The adrenaline of his hallucination passes as quickly as it had come. He can feel the glass pot in his pocket tapping occasionally, begging for his attention. His head aches. He runs a hand through his hair. That can't be. Is he really growing gray hairs already? In frustration, he reaches up and taps at his forehead. Much to his surprise, the headache disappears almost instantaneously. If anything, it feels good. He sits there for several minutes, drumming a couple of fingers against his forehead, and before he knows it, he's fast asleep. All his fears and anxieties long behind him. Only they are not behind him. Once he touches down, he goes straight home to his apartment. No spiders to be seen. Why not? Shouldn't there be more spiders? He certainly wants more spiders. His headache comes back, He drinks water, takes some medicine, goes for a nap, and turns off all of the lights, but nothing seems to work. Even the tapping stops working. More spiders. A call lights up his phone screen, an international number. He takes a long time to answer it. It's his translator. The man's voice is shrill, panicked, far beyond what the doctor had ever heard before, even when they'd been running from the spiders. The translator is not making much sense. His words are slurred, and his sentences stop and start seemingly at random. None of it makes sense. The doctor turns the volume on his phone down. It's too loud for his headache, way too loud. Government knows. Should have worn gloves. Too late. The pain, the pleasure, using a hammer.
Huh?
None of it makes any sense. The doctor looks down at his phone screen. The call is gone. His phone is dead. Hadn't it been on full a moment ago? What time is it? And where are the spiders? He punches himself in the head. A smile spreads across his face. He's in bed now. Something red around him. His pillow. It is soaked red. Could that be from his head? The sample pot sits on his bedside table, only now it's empty. How did that happen? Wasn't he standing in the kitchen a moment ago? He's losing time. He runs a hand through his hair. Webbing clings between his fingers. He sits under his desk with a hammer in his hand, euphoria washing over his body. Just once more. 8 more times. He hits the hammer against his forehead. Endorphins flood every cell of his body, so powerful he almost passes out as the pleasure chemicals crawl inside of him, oozing silk through the pores of his skin. Webs hang all over his apartment now. Just one more hit. 8 more hits. That feeling, it's just so. His wrists, his ankles. How many limbs? 4. Not enough. That light. Where is he? Figures crowd around him. It is hard to see them. Something's in his eye. Everything looks blurry and far away. The pain is back. His head. Someone, please. He screams and pulls against the bindings on his limbs. The pain. It's impossible. He needs to make it stop. Just one hit. Just one more hit from the hammer. That'll be enough. Something is behind his eye. He can feel it. Something crawling on the back of his eyeball. But that doesn't matter. None of it matters, except getting his pain to stop. No more headaches. Just one more hit. That's all he needs. The hospital staff have never seen anything like this before. They're out of their depth here. In the dead of night, they arrange for the doctor to be transferred to a specialist facility in the back of an ambulance. It is a challenge to get him out of his bed, as the spider's webs secreting from his skin have all but tied him to the linen. As fate would have it, a drunk driver gives the doctor his final wish. Not seeing a red light, the driver plows full speed into the side of the ambulance, sending it spinning off the road and down a hill, killing everyone inside, including the doctor. When police arrive at the scene in the early hours of the morning, they find the driver sitting on his own, staring at some small insect by the wreckage. The driver is unharmed by the incident. His only complaint as he spends the following night in police custody is that he feels a mild headache coming on. Anyone experiencing that headache is likely already too far gone from their exposure to SCP-632, an anomalous species of cognitohazardous arachnids nicknamed Intrusive Arachnid Thoughts. Unconfirmed reports of mysterious spider colonies have been springing up across Asia, particularly in rural China, for several decades in connection with this anomaly. In 1972, the population of an unnamed town in the Anhui province were found to have been almost entirely wiped out. An entire town of corpses, each with their heads caved in, brain matter missing. With 106 dead, with 23 injured, this case is to this day the deadliest confirmed SCP-632 breach. Strange as it may be, physiologically speaking, SCP-632 could be considered cute. Their bodies are squishy in texture, bright pink, and are in fact made up of human tissue, brain tissue to be exact, coated in a layer of protective fat. As happened to our unfortunate doctor, SCP-632 reproduces parasitically within the human skull. The exact mechanics of this process remain unclear. It is believed that SCP-632 infects its human host through a selection of sensory triggers. Those infected have each testified to having been exposed to the following. Firstly, viewing the pattern on SCP-632's abdomen exposed during the dance that the spiders often do under observation. Secondly, making physical contact with SCP-632. And lastly, through exposure to as yet unidentified chemical compounds secreted by the older SCP-632 instances. This is where luck was not on our doctor's side. He was smart enough to wear gloves during his encounter with SCP-632 in China, which may have been enough to protect him from being infected. However, upon his arrival as he fell out of the car, His hand landed directly in an SCP-632 web housing a solitary live spider. If he had remembered his car sickness tablets, this could have all been avoided. Within 3 hours of initial exposure to SCP-632, the subject will start to experience mild headaches, followed by an uncanny sensation that their skin is growing silk. During this period, MRI scans have found that small filament-like structures start to form within the host's brain tissue. As these filaments multiply and spread throughout the brain, the subjects report developing an obsession with spiders. The brain tissue steadily deteriorates, leading to changes in personality and mood, as well as irrational behavior. Over the coming days, the headaches grow more severe as the filament cells press against the blood vessels lining the inside of the skull. Subjects find that they can relieve this sensation by tapping or hitting their forehead, replacing it with a pleasurable feeling as the filaments release endorphins upon impact. This is part of the sinister final act of SCP-632's reproduction. After 6 to 7 days, as the host's headaches worsen, they find they have to hit their skull harder and harder to alleviate the pain and get that chemical high. Eventually, driven mad by the pain inside their head, they crack through their own skull. At this point, all of the gestating spiders that have been forming within the filaments in their brain, estimated to number between 80 and 200, can escape through the opening. Because of its unique containment difficulties caused by its cognitohazardous properties, SCP-632 has been given the Euclid object class. There is currently one live colony of SCP-632 stored in the biological containment wing of Site-52. The colony is housed in a small enclosure measured 20 centimeters by 40 centimeters by 20 centimeters and sustained on a diet of insects and water supplied through a vacuum chute. All personnel that work in proximity to SCP-632 are regularly screened. Physical contact with any SCP-632 is strictly prohibited, and all personnel are required to wear protective equipment and respirators at all times while handling live or deceased specimens. They keep a close eye on anyone developing any symptoms, especially headaches, the feeling of silk on the skin, or intrusive arachnid thoughts.
What was that? The man and woman's hike through a gently rolling portion of the Rocky Mountains has just taken a turn for the dangerous. There's something there in the bush, the man tells her before stepping in front of her in a defensive pose. They watch the bush intently. There's a slight rustling of the leaves as if something is inside. The man picks up a stick from the ground and holds it in front of him, ready to strike whatever fearsome beast is lurking in the underbrush. The rustling stops, but the man doesn't move from his protective stance. "Do you think it's gone?" the woman asks. The man isn't sure. He leans in towards the bush, searching for signs of what might be hiding inside when... Ah! The man screams and falls backwards as the creature emerges from the bush. "Aw!" the woman cries. "It's a pika!" She kneels down to get a closer look at the adorable little creature. Pikas are native to this part of Colorado, and they resemble rabbits but with small, rounded ears. She watches it hop back off the trail before turning around to see her friend lying tangled in the branches of a tree. She can't help but laugh as she offers a hand to help pull him out of his predicament. "Are you all right?" she asks between fits of laughter. Yes, he's fine. The only thing hurt was his pride. He notices a small red spot on his arm and rubs it, but it doesn't seem to hurt at all. His attention is diverted by the woman, though, who is marveling at the tree he was just stuck in. Free of the branches, he can appreciate now that the tree really is incredible. It looks like a huge blue spruce, but the name is a complete misnomer, because this tree is a vibrant red color. "I've never seen anything like it," she says, and the man hasn't either. Neither knows what species it is, and, strangely, there don't seem to be any others like it. Maybe this is the result of an odd genetic defect that turns blue spruces red. After admiring the tree for a moment, the pair decides that they've hiked far enough and that they should probably head back to the car. She jokes that he's likely exhausted from his run-in with a wild animal, and he laughs, but clearly his ego has been bruised. The man stops his car in front of the woman's house, and she thanks him for taking her on the hike. As she starts to get out, though, he stops her. He asks if she wants to go do something else, like dinner? The woman thanks him for his offer, but she has to be up early the next day for work. Just a quick drink then? An hour? 30 minutes? The woman tries her best to let her friend down easy, explaining that she likes him as a friend and as only that. The man opens his mouth to respond, but she stops him. If he valued their friendship, then he wouldn't try to take advantage of it by using it as a backdoor to dating her. The man again looks like his pride has been shattered. He apologizes and admits that she is right. It's just that he has such a good time with her that he never wants it to end. She gives him a sad smile as she closes the car door, and he watches her enter her house before he finally drives away.
It's 2 weeks later when the man's phone rings. It's his friend. She explains that she's been thinking a lot about what he said in the car and that she likes spending time with him too. Maybe there could be something more to their relationship. The man can't believe it. Is this really happening? The woman is serious. She'd like to take him up on that dinner offer, if he's still interested. Her treat. She wants to know what he is doing right. Ah! The man suddenly yelps in pain. Is he okay? What was that sound? Yes, I'm fine. It was nothing, the man tells her. It's just that now's not a good time. The woman doesn't understand. She thought he'd want to see her. She explains that she's leaving town for a work trip the next day and will be gone for a couple of weeks. She was hoping she could see him before she left, but the man cries out in pain again. He tells her that he hasn't been feeling well all day, but that he'll be all right. Okay, well, get well soon. I'll call you when I get back. They exchange goodbyes, and the man hangs up the phone. The man looks terrible. His skin is pale, and his face looks hollow and gaunt. He looks down at his arm and sees that the veins themselves appear to be moving, pulsing, and vibrating. He screams again in agony and falls to the floor, clutching his arm. After writhing on the floor, he manages to summon the strength to reach for the phone. His hand searches on the table above him, and eventually he's able to knock it onto the floor. He grabs the phone and starts to dial 911. Before he can press 1 again, another wave of intense searing pain consumes him. Several weeks later, the woman is standing outside the man's house. Mail and newspapers are piled up on his front porch, as if no one has been in or out in some time. She knocks on the door, but there's no response. Hello? She calls out, but still nothing. She's very worried. She's tried calling him several times, but he never answered or returned her messages. She tries the doorknob, and to her surprise, the front door swings open. She steps inside and the room is dark. She's also immediately hit by a strong aroma of pine? She searches on the wall and finds the switch. She turns on the lights and can't believe what she sees standing in front of her. There in the middle of the room is a massive spruce tree, its upper branches pressing against the ceiling. She reaches out and touches the tree's vivid red branches. They feel sticky and wet. She pulls her hand away and looks down to see that it's covered in a red substance. That's when she notices something else. Stuck among the trunk at the base of the tree is the half-consumed body of her friend. Unfortunately, this pair would never have the opportunity to see their feelings take root and grow, because unbeknownst to them, this beautiful tree is actually a very deadly anomaly, known to the SCP Foundation as SCP-867, but which is perhaps better known by its very appropriate nickname, Blood Spruce. SCP-867 is, or at least appears to be, quite similar to the species of tree Pisceae pungens, better known as the blue spruce. Of course, there are a number of dramatic differences between 867 and its non-anomalous counterpart. Visually, and most obvious, is the coloration. While blue spruces, as the name implies, are typically a blue-green color, SCP-867 is a deep, vibrant red. There's another major visual difference too, with the blood spruce lacking any sort of seed cones that you would normally expect to find. With no pine cones to protect and spread seeds, you'd be right to ask how SCP-867 goes about reproducing. The answer to that question is what makes this beautiful tree such a dangerous anomaly. The secret to how SCP-867 reproduces is found in its leaves. While they look like pine needles, SCP-867's leaves are, in fact, needles. Their structure is very similar to that of hypodermic needles, and each one contains a single long, thin seed, which sits above a small gas pocket at the base. When a living creature touches the leaves, the tree immediately reacts. It triggers the gas pocket in the base of the leaf to release, which injects the seed into the skin of whatever touched it. The process is quite similar to that found in auto-injectors, like those used to quickly treat allergic reactions. The seed itself is extremely small and is coated in a liquid that has both anesthetic and coagulant properties, which makes the process virtually undetectable. Once implanted in the skin, these seeds can lay dormant for up to 2 weeks before they begin the germination process, and the true horror of SCP-867 is revealed. Once the seeds begin to sprout and grow, they will not seek to penetrate through the skin like a plant rising out of the soil. Instead, the strange plant will grow within its host's body, spreading throughout the circulatory system. This process is extremely painful for the host. The plant's tendrils wind through their veins and capillary system, stretching and pressing against them as the blood spruce grows within them. Eventually, the ever-increasing size of the plant's tendrils becomes too much, and the veins will begin to rupture. This leads to severe internal bleeding, and soon after, the death of the host. The entire process is quite quick, with it only taking 24 hours from when the seeds first sprout to the host dying. But that single day will feel like an eternity to the afflicted individual as they feel the plant rapidly growing inside of their body. But even though the host has expired, this parasitoid tree is far from finished with them, or at least their body. Soon after death, a new instance of the blood spruce will burst from the body. The red tree is quite small at first, but it will continue to quickly grow, just as it did within its host's body, and can reach maturity in just 30 days. And unlike most other plants, SCP-867 is able to grow regardless of light or soil conditions, because it does not produce food via photosynthesis. No, this plant is carnivorous. As it grows, the 867 will slowly consume its host's body until nothing remains except the blood-red tree. Instances of SCP-867 were first identified in Colorado during the 1990s, following reports of numerous disappearances of hikers and park rangers. The SCP Foundation dispatched a team to the area to investigate, and they soon discovered numerous instances of the previously unidentified tree. Several still young specimens were acquired, though unfortunately, this led to the deaths of several agents who were not yet aware of just how dangerous the red spruces could be. Once their threat level was properly assessed, several specimens were flagged for containment and research purposes, while all of the other identified instances still in the wild were destroyed. The remaining instances of SCP-867 were classified as Euclid and are now securely kept at a Foundation biocontainment site. Direct human contact with the plants is normally not allowed, and remote rovers are used for the majority of tests and upkeep. If for any reason it is necessary for a human to enter 867's containment cell, they are to wear full hazmat suits with a Kevlar underlayer, and upon exiting the cell, must undergo a full herbicidal treatment and inspection. Should any possible puncture marks be discovered, they will be forced to quarantine for no less than 15 days. Ah, nature. It's so beautiful, peaceful, and calming, yet seems determined to try and kill us in any number of ways. If you're out hiking or camping in the woods, try to remember this extremely famous adage which I may or may not have just made up. It goes, "Leaves of 3, let them be. Needles of red, well, you're probably already dead."
It's 1 o'clock in the morning on a work night, and the last of the bar hoppers and clubgoers have long since turned in. At the end of the street, the last bar is finally closing down for the night. Or it would, except that the bartender is having trouble getting rid of a customer. Sitting at the bar, an old derelict is demanding yet another drink. The bartender grumbles in annoyance. This derelict is sloppy drunk, and the bartender just wants to go home. "Closing time," growls the bartender. "Just one more," protests the derelict, shaking his empty glass for emphasis. "I've got money." He laughs at his own words, his giggles ending with a loud belch that blows a cloud of aromatic vapor into the bartender's face. That's it. This derelict has been hanging out at this bar causing trouble all night, and the bartender has had enough. "Get out of here," says the bartender as he hustles the wobbling derelict out the door. "You're done." The derelict creaks and totters as he stumbles out into the street. The night's festivities are really hitting him. It isn't so often that he's got the money to burn, but when he does, he likes to spend it here. The prices are right, and the conversation is minimal, which is just the way that he likes it. The derelict turns around, fire in his eyes. He's raring to fight, and he doesn't care that the bartender is quite a bit larger than he is. Right now, all he can see is red. "Don't tell me when I've had enough," he slurs, raising his fists as he prepares to lash out. But the bartender has already slammed the door in his face. Defeated, the derelict turns his back on the closed bar and starts a slow stumble down the street. "Stupid bartender," mutters the derelict, turning up his collar against the cold bite of the night air. He wishes that he just had one more drink to warm his stomach against the chill. He's so out of it that he doesn't stop to think that the bartender did him a favor by refusing to fight. There is no way that the derelict would have won that battle. Even if he was in his physical prime, even if the bartender wasn't twice his size, the derelict is in no shape to fight. His vision is blurry and his head is swimming. In fact, he can barely remain upright. If he had any sense, he would probably stumble home and sleep this off. But the night is young, and he's not ready to give up yet. He walks down the street, eyeing every storefront in hopes of finding another bar. Unfortunately, every window has a closed sign in it. He swears under his breath. What a run of bad luck. What's a guy supposed to do in this town, he wonders. Just when he's about to give up hope, he spies something glinting in the reflective halo of a street lamp. He stumbles closer to get a better look, and he can hardly believe his eyes. Finally, his luck is changing. Someone has abandoned a half-empty bottle. "Well, hello there, old friend," says the derelict. He struggles to focus, but the world is spinning. In his confusion, he could swear he's seeing things. But no, he can feel the heft of the glass bottle in his hand, and he knows that it is as real as he is. "Who left you behind? Who would leave a perfectly good bottle just sitting out here?" He recognizes this brand. There's only about 3 fingers of liquid left, but that's better than nothing. Some people might balk at drinking out of a random bottle that you found on the street, but the derelict doesn't give it a second thought. He tips the bottle back and slurps it all down. It burns going down, just as it should, he thinks. He sighs in contentment as he feels the harsh liquid warm his stomach. Perfect. That really hit the spot. But what happens next surprises him so much that he can't believe his eyes. There's still liquid in the bottle. He blinks, wondering if maybe his adult brain is playing tricks on him, but he shakes the bottle cautiously and is rewarded with the telltale swish of liquid. That's no illusion. He takes another swig, guzzling it down. Normally, he'd drop the bottle to the ground and stumble on, but something makes him pause. He maintains his grip on the bottleneck and raises it again to take another look. And sure enough, there's still more left in the bottle. The derelict cannot believe his luck. He feels like he must have won the lottery. He's found a never-ending bottle. Already his mind is reeling with possibilities. "That bartender really thinks he's so smart," he mutters to himself as he weaves unsteadily. "But I don't need him anymore. See if I ever go to this stupid bar again. He just lost his best customer. Now that I have you, little bottle, I don't ever need to pay for drinks ever again." "It's the best day of my life," crows the derelict, raising his arms in triumph. He's barely able to stagger back to his home, a seedy apartment on the bad side of town, before he passes out on the floor. The morning sun rouses the slumbering derelict, and he rises with a groan. His whole body aches, and his mouth feels dry and parched. That's par for the course after a night of drinking, but somehow this hangover feels different. He puts that thought out of his mind as his mind returns to the strange, never-empty bottle that he discovered the night before. It's lying on its side on the floor next to him. He reaches for the mysterious bottle, only to find that, in fact, the previous night was not a dream. The bottle still contains just as much as it did the night before. He can't explain it, but the derelict isn't about to question his good fortune. He lifts himself to his feet and walks slowly into the bathroom. He's feeling a hangover like he's never felt before. His head is pounding and his throat is dry. His tongue feels swollen and sluggish inside his mouth, but he knows how to handle it. A little hair of the dog is all you need to help with the hangover. He takes another gulp from his bottle, but this time it brings little relief. And he notices something else strange too. It's his scalp. The skin on his head has started to itch, and he can't stop scratching. He feels like he's got the world's worst dandruff problem. He should probably take a shower, he thinks. He strips down and steps into the tub, turning the hot water on full blast and letting it wash over him. The shower only brings him temporary relief. Afterward, as he dries himself off, the towels feel rough and abrasive against his skin. His skin comes off in big, flaky patches, and his nails leave red trails in their wake. What's that? Is that blood? He examines his fingers to see that his nails have grown into ragged, claw-like talons. With a frightened yelp, he bites them off. It's easy to do. Although they look formidable, his fingernails are weak and brittle, almost as if he's dealing with a sudden calcium deficiency. What could be wrong with him? He remembers all the warnings he heard back in school when they used to march everyone into assembly to listen to lectures from the local police. At the time, he scoffed at the long lists of scary-sounding consequences of a lifetime of drinking, but now, he's not so sure. "It's probably nothing," he says as he examines himself in the bathroom mirror. His skin looks blotchy and infected. It doesn't take long before his hair and nails are out of control. His hair grows down to his shoulders, but comes out in big, ragged clumps if he runs his fingers through it. His claw-like fingernails are constantly breaking and cracking until his fingertips are bloody, and his quick is itchy and infected. If his habits had left him looking worse for wear before, he really looks awful now. For the next week, he barely leaves the apartment. He pulls the curtains and keeps the lights off, afraid that someone might see him. When the landlord bangs on the door, shouting that rent is late and demanding that the derelict hand over the money, he doesn't answer. He waits. The landlord gives up for now. That's good, thinks the derelict. It will give him time to think, time to figure out what to do about his disease. He knows that something is not right. Many of the local bartenders are, by now, probably wondering where he's gone. It's not like the derelict to stay away. He's practically kept the bar industry in this town afloat all by himself. It must be something major indeed to keep him away from his favorite poison. Luckily, he still has the bottomless bottle to comfort him during this trying time. The derelict is certain that he's caught some bad bug, but he thinks that he can wait it out. All he needs to do is make it through the next week, and everything will be fine. Sipping free drinks helps him to pass the time in a pleasant stupor as he waits for his health to return. Unfortunately, things are only going to get worse for him. His hair and fingernails keep growing, to the point that he has trouble lifting the bottle without his twisted nails getting in the way. His dry, flaky skin is changing as well, becoming thick and leathery and hanging off him in great folds like the hide of an elephant or a rhinoceros. His skin continues to grow, until the folds flop over his knees and gradually hang lower and lower until they touch the ground. Moving is harder now that he's carrying so much extra weight. He thought at first he just had a nasty bug, but he's clearly picked up some weird skin condition, and even this derelict, sodded as he might be, suspects exactly where he got it. It's got to be that crazy bottomless bottle. He can't think of another reason. Even so, he can't bring himself to part with this little gift from heaven. Even in his darkest hour, a few sips of liquid courage always helps to calm his nerves. He considers lumbering down to the free clinic in hopes that they might be able to cure him or at least tell him what's wrong with his skin. But he thinks better of this option. What if he's got some weird alien parasite that no one has ever seen before? They might lock him away in some government lab or something. No, he reasons, it's better to wait it out. He'll sleep it off, swear off the sauce for a little while, and maybe it'll pass. In desperation, the derelict drags himself across the floor, hoping to at least find some solace away from human contact. He locks himself into his bedroom while he's still able to manipulate the lock on his door. The extra folds of skin are hanging off of his hands and arms, making it hard to do anything. The extra skin is so heavy that he can't walk much carrying all that extra weight. He lies on the floor of his bedroom, away from everything, and hopes that tomorrow, when he wakes up, this will just be a fading dream. The only thing that brings him solace is the never-ending bottle, which, even now in his advanced state of decay, he keeps close by him. After all, he reasons, the damage is already done. What could possibly be the harm in enjoying a nice drink? A week later, his condition has not passed. The landlord is back, and this time he's not taking no for an answer. The landlord isn't supposed to enter his tenant's apartment without permission, but he doesn't care. He uses his own key to unlock the door and go inside. The condition of the apartment is appalling. The furniture is broken, the floor is covered with unidentifiable filth, and there's a rotten stench in the air. The landlord wants to throw up as the full weight of the musty smell hits him in the face. It's as if someone has been living in here without any ventilation, with all the windows firmly closed and sealed. A sudden noise from the bathroom draws his attention. Of course, thinks the landlord, that old bum is hiding in there. He thinks I won't find him. The landlord steels his resolve and heads towards the bathroom, determined to get the money that he feels is owed to him. But what greets him when he steps through the door isn't the derelict anymore. It isn't even human. The creature in the bathroom is a massive pile of ambulatory skin folds. The skin flaps have grown so large and cumbersome that the derelict within can barely move. They sprout all over his body, covering him so that he looks more like some kind of alien sea cucumber now than any human. The landlord stumbles backwards, screaming in terror at the sight, unable to comprehend what he's looking at. Improbably, the creature reacts to the noise, and a ripple of movement spreads across its surface. It starts to move, despite not having any legs. The landlord is so terrified that he doesn't notice the glass bottle that suddenly drops from between the creature's skin folds as it starts to move toward him. The same bottle, still with 3 fingers of liquid inside. How could something like this happen? What parasite or disease did the derelict contract from the miracle bottle he found? Sadly, this never-ending bottle isn't a boon, but a curse, and the man who found it that night became just another victim of what the SCP Foundation has classified as SCP-420. SCP-420 looks like a perfectly ordinary bottle of a certain popular libation, even to the point that it bears the label of a common brand. The bottle always contains a small amount of a mysterious liquid known as SCP-420-1. If this liquid is poured out, SCP-420 will always replenish itself. When SCP-420-1 is potent, it is physically, chemically, and molecularly indistinguishable from ordinary whiskey, although drinking will have an effect far greater than even the strongest liquor. When SCP-420-1 is poured out of SCP-420, though, it undergoes a strange transformation, eventually losing its potency and changing until it is indistinguishable physically, chemically, or molecularly from urine. Consuming potent SCP-420-1 instigates a bizarre physical transformation called SCP-420-2 in 6 stages. In Stage 1, beginning 12 hours after consumption, the subject will start to have difficulty speaking, resulting in slurred speech that is not consistent with normal alcohol inebriation. Their fingernails, toenails, and hair will start to grow at an accelerated rate, but also become brittle and prone to breakage. Nail breakage to the quick often leads to bleeding and infection. The Foundation has had some success in curing SCP-420-2 if it is caught when still in Stage 1, treating it as if it is an aggressive form of cancer with radiation and chemotherapy, as well as a constant intravenous supply of Formula 420A09T-T174B. Victims thus treated have a 73% recovery rate, but a 21% fatality rate. From Phase 2 onward, this protocol can slow the spread of SCP-420-2, but will not stop it entirely. In Stage 2, beginning 1 to 2 weeks after Stage 1, the subject's skin begins to show similar properties to those exhibited by hair and fingernails in Stage 1, becoming dry, brittle, and prone to cracking. As old skin flakes off, the subject's new skin begins to grow at an accelerated rate, eventually forming thick, leathery folds all over the subject's body. Skin flaps growing inside the mouth interfere with speech and eventually render subjects mute, but do not appear to impede breathing or eating. Indeed, subjects in Stage 2 exhibit a renewed interest in eating, possibly because the subject's body requires additional nutrients and calories to build the increasingly heavy armor of thickened, calloused skin. Stage 2 subjects will eat anything that they can get their hands on, and many die after attempting to eat poisonous or inedible objects. In Stage 3, beginning 3 to 6 weeks after Stage 2, nerves in the skin layer grow uncontrollably, but no longer connect to the victim's central nervous system. Genetic testing of the skin in this stage reveals that its DNA has become so mutated that it can no longer be classified as human. It is, in fact, a separate and very inhuman organism that almost acts as a parasite growing from the human host. The skin may develop tumor-like growths, which appear to be analogous to human muscle and secretory cells. Hair and fingernails sprout randomly from the mass of skin. By Stage 4, beginning 3 to 7 days after Stage 3, the skin has become a mass of thick, leathery folds, completely covering the human host to the point that they disappear completely. The skin begins to exhibit random twitching movements, as though it is indeed a living organism finally coming into its own as a life form and testing out its new body. The human subject within the skin continues to eat, although brain scans reveal that they are no longer in control of their mouth. Instead, the skin entity forces the mouth to move by moving the attached skin. Small holes begin to form in the skin, eventually growing into narrow tunnels or throats that lead back to the now trapped body of the helpless subject. The subject is still consumed with a ravenous hunger and will eat anything that they can get in their mouth. In Stage 5, beginning 1 to 2 days after Stage 4, the skin begins to move in patterns indicating rudimentary intelligence. The skin, although still attached to the original subject, is now completely and distinctly non-human. It is its own organism. It can move of its own accord, dragging the trapped host along for the ride, and it moves and feeds much in the manner of an extremely large amoeba. It feeds by excreting a digestive enzyme onto foodstuffs and then enveloping the nutrients with its skin folds, again like an amoeba surrounding its food. The food is taken into the throats. These tunnels connecting the outside of the skin to the now completely subsumed host are now directly connected to the host's circulatory system and function as additional mouths. They can consume nutrients which are moved down their length by bristly hairs and further broken down by grinding keratinous plates before being taken into the host's body. Most hosts will remain in Stage 5 indefinitely, although there still remains a much more dangerous Stage 6 yet to come. At this time, it's unknown what factor triggers SCP-420-2 to develop into Stage 6. Little information about Stage 6 is available at this time, although it is known that it involves even more accelerated skin and keratin growth, resulting in a sudden increase in size and mass. Perhaps the most terrifying part of the entire transformation is that the host remains alive for the duration of the process, and sometimes even after SCP-420-2 has settled comfortably into its new life at Stage 5. Mercifully, most hosts will have completely succumbed to insanity by this point, although some are shown by brain scans to still be self-aware and quite calm, perhaps fading into a zen-like state as they accept the inevitability of their fate. SCP-420 is contained in a storage locker at an undisclosed site maintained by the Foundation, and it is only to be removed from this locker by SCP staff with Level 3 clearance or higher. It has been given the Safe class because, despite the horrifying nature of its effects, at least it doesn't move anywhere. Samples of SCP-420-1 not in use by testing should be stored in the container marked SCP-420-1 Decon in Locker 1014-420 until they lose potency, at which time they can be disposed of as biohazardous liquid waste. Victims infected with SCP-420-2 are not contagious and should be contained in standard solitary D-Class secure confinement. On reaching Phase 3, subjects should receive double rations. Due to the extreme danger of Phase 6, any subjects who reach Phase 4 should be closely monitored for signs that the condition may be advancing further, in which case they are to be immediately destroyed by incineration. Knowing the fate that befalls victims of SCP-420 should make anyone think twice about drinking out of a random bottle that you just found in the street. Though personally, I think that's just common sense.
A man wakes up with a start. Did something just bite him? He looks down at his hand. Something definitely bit him. He can see the red welt already forming. He looks around for the culprit, but can't find it anywhere. He really hopes he doesn't have bed bugs. That's the last thing he needs right now. He'll have to keep his eyes open for potential pests. He doesn't want this to happen again, since the spot is already starting to itch and feel uncomfortable. A couple days pass, though, with no signs of other bugs. It must have just been a random insect that came inside his house to escape the winter cold. The spot on his hand felt a little rough for a day or two, but now he's pretty much forgotten all about it. Now what he really needs is some coffee before sitting down to another coding session. The man is in his kitchen trying to make a fresh pot of coffee, but finds he's having a hard time. He's not so much making coffee as he is making a mess. He knocks his favorite mug onto the ground, breaking it, and decides that maybe he doesn't need coffee after all. A couple of nights later, as the man is watching TV, he starts to cough. Just a little at first, but then more and more. The coughing fits get longer and deeper too, like they are coming from the very bottom of his lungs. He hopes he isn't coming down with something. He hasn't left the house in days, so how could he have? Can bugs transfer colds? He'll have to look it up later. For now, he needs to do something about this cough. He won't be able to sleep if it keeps up. He needs to go get some medicine. The man gets bundled up and heads out. It's lightly snowing as he walks to the pharmacy, and he can't help but admire the way the moon hangs in the sky, a beautiful beacon of light on this dark winter evening. Inside the pharmacy, he finds the cold medicine section and picks out a cough suppressant. He takes it to the counter and decides to get a few candy bars too. He's developed a real sweet tooth these last few days. The man starts to cough again. It's a good thing he's getting this medicine. Several more days pass, and the man isn't feeling any better. This cough just won't go away. He decides it's finally time to go see a doctor. As he sits in the doctor's office waiting room, he does his best to hold in his coughs, but he has a very hard time. The woman on the other side of the room is coughing too. Strangely, it actually makes him feel a little better. There must just be something going around. A nurse comes into the waiting room and calls his name. The doctor is ready for him. The man is sitting on the bed in the examination room when the doctor enters. He's looking over his medical records and doesn't even look up from his clipboard. He tells the man to take off his shirt so that he can be examined, and the man obliges. "Okay, let's see what the trouble is," the doctor says. He finally looks up at the man and screams. It didn't take long for the SCP Foundation to hear the reports of people's limbs metamorphosing into insectoid appendages, and they knew immediately what they were dealing with. This was another outbreak of the parasitic, limb-transforming insect known as SCP-150. SCP-150 is an obligate parasite, meaning that it requires a host for the completion of its reproductive life cycle. It bears a visual appearance similar to that of Cymathoa exigua, another parasite that eats the tongue of a particular type of fish before replacing the tongue with its own body. SCP-150 engages in similar behavior, though it appears to exclusively affect humans. When a human comes in contact with the small bug-like organism, it will embed itself under its new host's skin. Next, over the course of roughly 7 days, SCP-150 will burrow deep into the host's flesh and begin to cause numerous physiological changes to them.
First, and most prominently, SCP-150 will begin a gradual process of altering the limb that is nearest to the original infection site. As SCP-150 burrows deeper and consumes the flesh, it excretes a substance that has the effect of replacing the missing sections of the limb with a hard, chitinous material that resembles one of its own appendages. Beneath the chitin, the excreted substance forms a rudimentary nervous system that gives the host the ability to control the new limb as if it were their own. As it feeds, SCP-150 also secretes several chemicals that contain anesthetic, immunosuppressant, and transplant-rejecting properties that keep the host's body from responding to the changes, or even reacting at all. In fact, the host will often report that their new limb is completely normal and feels stronger and more resilient after the transformation. SCP-150 will continue to feed for approximately 1 to 2 weeks, and as it feeds on the nutrients within its host's body, it will begin to reproduce, creating eggs that it deposits directly into the bloodstream. While the majority of these eggs will die off, enough usually survive to begin colonizing other parts of the host's body, where they will hatch and repeat the process of feeding, reproducing, and spreading more eggs. It is theorized that it is capable of reproducing on its own, meaning that a single instance of SCP-150 is all it takes to create a new colony. Humans infected with SCP-150 will sometimes report slight discomfort and issues with their fine motor skills during this period, but will usually not express any knowledge of what might be causing this. Eventually, SCP-150 eggs will reach the host's lungs, where the process of assimilating continues, this time replacing the lungs themselves. During this process, more eggs will be produced, laid, and then spread out of the body by the host's coughing. As many as 10,000 eggs will be produced during this period, approximately 1% of which will survive being expelled, find another host, and implant themselves. The assimilation process then spreads to the central nervous system, including the spinal cord and brain, but strangely, the host will show no signs that their consciousness or behavior have been affected in any way. In interviews with hosts of SCP-150, those who are unaware that they are infected have not expressed any knowledge of changes happening in or out of their body. When subjects are made aware that they have been infected, they will be able to point out the site of the original infection and agree that a change has taken place, but they seem to have no ill will towards their new chitinous appendages and will often express positive feelings about it. In order to better study the effects of SCP-150 under SCP Foundation control, 2 D-Class personnel, D-13732 and D-016002, were both infected with the parasites, and the assimilation process was allowed to fully progress through all the stages. Following signs that D-016002 was experiencing swelling of the brain, a decompressive craniotomy was performed, a procedure in which a portion of the skull is removed in order to relieve pressure on the brain. This surgery had the added benefit of giving Foundation researchers the chance to look at SCP-150's progress firsthand. But after a flap of her skull was removed, the attending scientists did not find that her brain was swelling. They didn't find her brain at all, but instead observed numerous instances of SCP-150 in the cavity where her brain should be. The D-Class had been partially anesthetized to numb her skull but remained conscious during the procedure, and the scientists asked her several simple questions to which she was perfectly able to answer. They began removing some of the parasites, and as they did so, her answers became slower and less clear. It appeared that the SCP-150 instances had not just eaten and replaced her brain, they had become her brain. For the next experiment, they would use the instances of SCP-150 that had been removed from D-13732's nervous system after he had been euthanized following the discovery that his entire nervous system had also been replaced entirely by SCP-150. The parasites taken from his brain cavity were placed into D-016002's, and the results were nothing short of incredible. After observing a period of time where the organisms appeared to move and rearrange themselves within her skull, she regained consciousness. Once awake, not only did her cognitive functions immediately improve, when she was asked to state her name, she told them it was Michael, D-13732's name. It is unknown why SCP-150 engages in this peculiar life cycle, but the danger it poses to humans and the difficulty in keeping it contained has led the SCP Foundation to classify it as Keter. Some of the more erudite researchers have taken to calling the parasite the ship of Theseus, a play on the philosophical notion that questions whether something that has had all of its parts replaced is still fundamentally the same, or if it has become something new. Perhaps the observation of those infected with SCP-150 can shed some light on this millennia-old question. Infected patients who are being studied are to be kept in Level 3 biohazard containment cells, with never more than one infected host per cell. Cultures of SCP-150 adults and eggs are kept in vacuum-sealed glass flasks in the Site-42 Infectious Materials Lab, and the Foundation's standard pathogen handling procedures are required to be followed at all times. Should any instance of SCP-150 be found outside of containment, it is to be immediately incinerated.
Tell me if it starts to hurt, the dentist says before reaching into your mouth with a pair of orthodontic pliers and starting to pull your front teeth back into place. Evidently, your screams aren't enough of an indication of the extreme pain you feel because he doesn't stop pulling. After what feels like hours of excruciating oral surgery, you're finally standing outside the dentist's office texting with a friend. "Come on, show me. It can't be that bad," reads the message from your friend. You're nervous to send her a picture, though, since you have a small crush on the girl and you don't want her to see you in this state. But after she asks you again, you decide to take a quick selfie and send it to her anyway. You snap a photo of your mangled mouth and jaw. The mess of wires had to be hastily applied to move your remaining crooked teeth back into place with globs of fast-hardening epoxy, and the result looks like a low-budget horror movie prosthetic. You send the message and wait. You watch the dots appear that indicate she's writing a response, then watch as they disappear without a reply. You sadly slip the phone back into your pocket and begin walking away. As you make your way home with your head hung in shame, you keep your mouth shut tight. You don't want any passers-by to see what you've become. You decide to detour through the park to avoid any people as much as possible, and as you walk, you decide to stop at a picnic table next to a small pond. You sit at the table and watch the ducks mill about in the water. They have it so lucky, you think. Ducks never have to worry about their teeth getting knocked out by a baseball and leaving them looking like a monster. The ducks suddenly all start moving away from your side of the pond, eventually taking flight and leaving completely. You get the sense that they're trying to get away from something, and you turn around, but there's nothing behind you. Oh, it must be me, you think. But then you get the sense that there is something behind you, and turn again. Still though, there's nothing. It's just you, the picnic table, and the empty pond. You turn back to watch the still water, but you can't shake the feeling that there's someone behind you, and turn again. "Hello? Is anyone there?" you ask, but no one answers. You turn back to the pond and you scream in fright at the thing standing before you and fall back off the picnic table. You get up out of the dirt and you don't wait to stick around to see who or what this thing is. You start to run as fast as you can, but you immediately hear it chasing after you. Instinctually, you take out your phone and start trying to take pictures of whatever it is that's behind you. You know no one will ever believe you, and you want some evidence of this thing. You manage to snap off a couple of pictures, but you can hear the creature gaining on you. You scream as your mouth begins to ache. Perhaps running this soon after your surgery is causing your damaged teeth to shift, and the pain is intense. It starts to feel like your mouth is full of jagged rocks, but you can feel that it is your teeth pushing out and stabbing into your mouth. You take one last picture before the creature leaps on you, sending you both to the ground, and your phone tumbling into the dirt. Early the next morning, a police perimeter has been set up in the park. The detective arrives and walks past the traumatized-looking jogger who must have been the one that discovered the grisly scene. An officer guarding the site lifts up the police tape so the detective can enter the crime scene that surrounds a body lying under a white sheet. The detective asks the officer if they've found anything yet, and the officer hands the detective a plastic bag containing a dirty cell phone. The detective puts on a latex glove and removes the phone from the bag. The screen is cracked, but it still works. There's numerous messages on the screen that look like they're from someone trying to apologize for not responding sooner, and asking where the phone's owner is and if they're mad at her. The detective opens the phone's camera app and starts looking at the last photos that were taken. It's a strange series of pictures. They seem to all be selfies that a young man was taking as he ran through the park. It almost appears as though there's a figure behind him, but it's hard to tell. There's a foggy white vignette on the pictures that gets worse the further he looks, slowly closing in until the last photo is nothing but a blurred milky white screen. The detective flips the phone over and looks at the lens, which you can see is completely covered in a hard white substance. The detective places the phone back in the evidence bag and kneels down next to the body. The
The police officer turns away. He's already seen the victim and doesn't need to again. The detective pulls down the sheet to reveal a truly shocking sight. The boy's mouth is a mess of teeth, far, far too many teeth. There are teeth growing out of every part of his gums at horrible angles, filling his mouth and jutting out at painfully odd angles. Who could have done this? What could have done this? The local police department may not have had any idea what the state of this victim meant, but the SCP Foundation did, because they had seen the same occurrence dozens of times before. In fact, they had seen it happen so many times that they had classified this anomalous entity as SCP-4910, but it had already earned a much more ominous nickname within the Foundation. It was known as the Grinner. Very little is known about SCP-4910, and eyewitness accounts of the creature are all extremely brief due to those who have interacted with it quickly succumbing to its effects. What is known is that SCP-4910 is a quadruped and appears to be made partially, or perhaps entirely, out of teeth. Those who encounter SCP-4910 quickly experience its primary anomalous effect, which is that it causes the extremely rapid overproduction of teeth in its victims' mouths. Existing teeth will quickly increase in size, protruding farther out of the gums than should be able, while new teeth will begin to sprout from any available space in the mouth, including the roof of the mouth and underneath the tongue. These new teeth will completely fill the mouth, which almost immediately inhibits their ability to speak or vocalize at all. The creature will then use this opportunity to attack and incapacitate the victim before starting to feed. Further adding to the mystery of SCP-4910's appearance comes from the effect it has on any nearby recording equipment. Cameras and other devices that come within SCP-4910's proximity will have their critical components compromised by a sudden appearance of a layer of dentin, which is the calcified material that partially makes up teeth. Interestingly, SCP-4910 seems to possess some level of intelligence, as it appears able to differentiate between normal civilians, who it hunts for sustenance, and members of organizations that seek to hunt down and contain or harm it, which it uses for an even more nefarious purpose. While the exact mechanics are still unclear, it seems as though SCP-4910 is able to infect certain anomalous organization members with its ability, causing them to act as a vector for the effect, who then spread it to even more victims. This effect is, of course, of great concern to the Foundation, and containment protocols for infected victims have been hastily put into place. Should a member of staff begin bearing a grin with too many teeth or multiple tooth-filled smiles, they are to be immediately immobilized by any means necessary, though preferably with a firearm that allows one to keep an appropriate distance and hopefully prevent any further spread of the effect. The infected individual is then to be doused in a hydrochloric chemical compound that will reduce the afflicted to a pulp-like substance. Once this pulp is no longer animate, it can be transferred to the closest incineration site for disposal. Should a member of personnel have an interaction with SCP-4910 and feel that they were exposed to its anomalous effects, they may be saved by taking immediate medical action. Oral surgery to remove the additional teeth has been found to be effective when the procedure is undergone in the first 1 to 2 hours following exposure, though the victim will suffer lifelong permanent physical issues from the procedure. Once 3 hours have passed, the effect will have spread to the rest of the body, with teeth appearing virtually anywhere. Unfortunately for the victim, should the infection reach this point, pain management has been shown to be ineffective, and there is nothing that can be done to alleviate their suffering, save for termination. SCP-4910 remains at large and has been given the Keter classification. Mobile Task Force Epsilon, codenamed Turfing Black, is the only MTF authorized to respond to sightings, and they have been given permission to engage the creature and utilize lethal force if necessary, due to the danger this anomaly presents specifically to the SCP Foundation.
A kindly-looking old woman is carrying groceries into her home. When she closes the door, a crack forms in the wall, and a tile slides down off her roof, crashing to the ground and shattering. The next day, the local builder seems confused. He just fixed a similar problem a week ago at another house, and another the week before that. He'll patch this crack just like he did before and repair the roof, but as he does so, he can't help but think he'll be at another house with the same problem soon. Old people are like this sometimes, though, breaking things on purpose to get someone to come visit them. Oh well, as long as the money is right, he'll keep doing the repairs. That evening, the old woman is in bed when she's woken up by something falling onto her face.
A crack is opened in the ceiling right above her bed, and plaster is falling on her. What is happening to this house? She would have to call the builder again in the morning and let him know that it was getting worse. She gets up to clean the plaster dust off her face, but stops halfway to the door. Was that a noise she heard? It sounded like it was coming from downstairs. Another noise. She definitely heard something. Is someone in her home? "Hello?" she cries out. "Whoever you are, you better go. My husband is going to be home any moment, and he won't be happy." The noises seem to have stopped. Maybe she was imagining things. Who would rob a poor old woman, after all? She didn't have anything worth taking. She still needs to wash the plaster off her face, though. She listens for a moment, and when she doesn't hear anything else, she opens the bedroom door and screams. The next day, a child stands in front of the house with a look of shock. Was there an earthquake? How could a house end up like this? They ring the doorbell, but there's no answer. They knock on the door and are surprised to find that the door is open. "Grandma?" the child cries into the quiet house. No response. The child enters and looks around. The house is a mess. Chunks of plaster have fallen off the walls and ceiling. Shelves have fallen over, spilling their contents. And there's broken glass from shattered light bulbs everywhere. The boy looks up the stairs and can see that his grandmother's bedroom door is open and the light is on. "Grandma, are you up there?" Still no response. The child nervously starts up the stairs, gripping the railing tight. They quietly make their way to the bedroom and step into the sliver of light coming from the cracked door. The child pushes the door open to find their grandmother on the floor. Only, it isn't their grandmother. Whatever this is looks like their grandmother, but like she has been stretched and twisted, her body bent at angles where no joints exist. The child is paralyzed with fear, unable to do anything but stare. But the nightmare isn't over yet, because their grandmother is still alive. Sadly, reports like these are all too common in this small town that is plagued by attacks from SCP-783, also known as the Crooked Man. SCP-783 is an extremely dangerous anomalous creature that is currently plaguing the population of Tenby, a small rural village in Oxfordshire, England. Every 12 years during the fall and winter months, SCP-783 will engage in a period of hostile behavior that lasts for roughly 70 days, during which time it will target and attack people who are indoors and alone after sunset. Those targeted by SCP-783 will find that the building they are in rapidly deteriorates, causing damage and creating structural integrity issues. These often appear as cracks on the outside of the building that lead to the buildings taking on a crooked appearance. Unfortunately, while the SCP Foundation is aware of both the location and the periods within which SCP-783 operates, it has so far been unable to prevent any attacks. Additionally, the Foundation has yet to be able to produce either an image or even a physical description of SCP-783 due to the effect it has on recording equipment. Cameras set up to capture the anomaly produce only distorted or corrupted footage, leaving its appearance a mystery. Victims targeted by SCP-783 meet a fate that is, in many ways, worse than death. Their bodies will experience extreme deformations, as their bones suffer dozens of fractures and are stretched and twisted in various unnatural directions. They are then healed by the rapid generation of cartilage and the growth of extra skin to cover the new elongated limbs, leaving the victims a malformed knot of gnarled extremities. Some of the cases are quite severe, with one victim having just their forearm extended to over 2.4 meters, and another who was left stretched to 12.5 meters in height. Despite the gruesome injuries suffered, the majority of victims are still alive following the attacks, though they will more often than not be left completely paralyzed, in a persistent vegetative state, or both. 27 victims of SCP-783 are currently being held in a long-term care facility within a wing of a local hospital that was requisitioned by the Foundation specifically for the care and treatment of 783 victims. Like many of the anomalies that the SCP Foundation investigates and contains, many of the residents of Tenby appear to have some awareness of the Crooked Man, and the anomaly has become something of a local boogeyman. Researchers have even documented local school children singing a nursery rhyme that appears connected and may even explain the origins of the creature. It goes, "There lived a crooked man who made a crooked deal. He kept a crooked cane
and his catch in crooked creel. He stole a crooked child who cried a crooked squeal, and that crooked little man was broken on the wheel. A month before a recent SCP-783 period of activity was to begin, a Class D personnel, D-209, was sent to live in a Foundation-owned home in the village. Audio and video recording equipment was set up throughout the house in case the D-Class was targeted, in the hopes that some information could be gleaned should something take place. 43 days after he began living in the house, something finally did. One evening while in bed reading a book, D-209 heard noises on the ground floor of the home. Cameras on the first floor experienced corruption and showed only a distortion moving through the house. When D-209 attempted to leave the bedroom and escape the home, they immediately encountered SCP-783. During a period of time that lasted roughly 5 hours, their bones were broken numerous times and reset over and over, leaving D-209 a twisted mass of flesh and bone. Strangely, at the exact same time that D-209 was being attacked, all 27 of the living prior SCP-783 victims in the hospital experienced violent seizures, despite most of them having been declared functionally brain dead and the rest being totally paralyzed. Also concurrent with the attack was a seismic event on the outskirts of town, and the details revealed by this event were both illuminating and extremely disturbing. Foundation personnel were dispatched to the site of the seismic activity to investigate and determine if it was connected to SCP-783 in any way. There, they found a small group of angry townspeople, perhaps frustrated by seemingly unending paranormal events in their town and the lack of progress that had been made to stop them. After a tense standoff, SCP Agent Collins fired her service weapon into the air, and the crowd quickly scattered. Now, free of distraction, the agents could begin their investigation in earnest. They immediately spotted several objects sticking out of the earth. Upon closer inspection, these were identified as elongated human toes. A dig team was sent to the site, and by the next day, a mass grave had been uncovered that was filled with a twisted mass of what appeared to be victims of SCP-783. Their mutated and drawn-out bodies were well preserved despite being buried directly in the ground, and had all been buried head down, with their arms extending deeper into the burial pit. As one researcher was attempting to take a tissue sample from one of the bodies, the ground beneath him gave way and he fell into the pit. He landed on the tangled mass of limbs which shifted under his weight, and he disappeared into the pit beneath them. Agent Collins immediately found a length of rope, tied it to her waist, and climbed into the pit with instructions to the on-site team to pull her back up when she signaled. Agent Collins descended into the pit beneath the bodies, and after several minutes, she was extracted, though without the missing researcher. At debriefing, she described how she found an anomalous location under the ground beneath 783's victims' corpses, and she was so rattled by what she saw that she was granted a temporary leave of absence. The Foundation had to know more, and a D-Class personnel was quickly selected for exploration of the underground anomaly. D-2172 was equipped with audio and video recording equipment, along with several scientific measurement tools, as well as a firearm, and was lowered down into the pit via crane. Their wired tether to the surface would both send the information they collected back, as well as serve as their lifeline to the surface. As D-2172 was lowered past the mass of corpses into the darkness, they experienced a sense of vertigo, before it was realized that the anomalous effects extended to gravity as well, which had become reversed, and that they would need to start climbing up in order to descend further into the pit. They soon climbed out of the hole surrounded by the reaching, extended arms of corpses, and emerged into an open world with an overcast sky. It looked exactly like the town of Tembe, with the same buildings present there as in our world. The world appeared to be uninhabited, though, with no sign of the missing SCP Foundation researcher. D-2172 began investigating the buildings and found them all to be empty as well, though they did unfortunately find signs of a struggle in one house, with what looked to be evidence of the missing researcher's demise. They continued exploring the area and found that the anomalous properties of the location extended to its borders too. And as the D-Class walked north out of the town, after several kilometers, they found that they were now somehow back at the southern edge of the town. D-2172 was ordered to return to the entry point, but as they walked, they were suddenly impeded by the deformed body of an SCP-783 victim that stretched across the road in front of them. D2172 drew and fired their weapon at the entity, but it didn't react, and they were forced to retreat into the nearby woods. After several minutes, they stopped to rest when they spotted something else. In the distance, the D-Class saw what looked to be a giant white birch tree, and it was coming towards them. As the living tree approached, it became clear that it wasn't a tree at all. What looked like branches were extended bony fingers that it was using to walk. The long branch-like fingers were coming out of the top of the tree, where D2172 could see their origin. These branches were the elongated fingers of the missing SCP Foundation researcher. D2172 turned to run as the giant living tree chased them back into the town, firing their weapon at the creature whenever they had the chance, but was unable to stop it. The visual feed was soon lost as the audio continued to broadcast the screams of D2172. But this wasn't the end of the expedition. The on-site team was surprised to witness after several hours that the tether was pulled on twice, the signal that it should be reeled in. A medical team was sent to the site since it was assumed that D2172 would need immediate care, and the team began reeling in the line. After several minutes, they spotted the harness that should have been strapped to D2172, but with nothing in it. They continued to pull, but the harness became stuck on the mass of corpses in the pit. They then noticed that it wasn't actually stuck. There was a hand holding onto the harness for dear life. It was D2172's hand. The team kept pulling as D2172's arm kept stretching out of the pit to a length of over 3 meters. But eventually, the resistance became too much. D2172 lost its grip, and it was seen sinking back into the mass of corpses inside the pit. Following this expedition, it was determined that only special operations teams and mobile task forces would be used to explore the dangerous anomalous location in the future. At least 3 such expeditions have been undertaken, though the details remain classified for the time being, and perhaps it is for the best if they remain so. The SCP Foundation will continue to monitor the town of Tembe in an attempt to learn more about SCP-783 and hopefully discover a means to contain it and its related phenomena. Due to the difficulty in containing the anomaly, it has been classified as Keter, and a local building adjacent to the Tembe Hospital has been requisitioned and designated as Provisional Site 5 in order to accommodate the increased Foundation presence. As the SCP Foundation continues to research this mysterious and highly dangerous anomaly, any victims of SCP-783 are to be retrieved, their injuries cataloged, and then their bodies are to be incinerated.
A young woman steps onto her bathroom scale. She holds her breath and squeezes her eyes shut, afraid to see the results as she listens to the dial spinning. When it slows to a stop, she opens her eyes and looks down. She balks at the result. 150 pounds! That's unacceptable in her eyes. She steps off the scale and examines her reflection in the full-length mirror. In truth, her weight is far from out of control, but when she looks at herself, she can't help but see flaws. The subtle ring of pudge around her middle, the way her butt sticks out just a little too far for her liking, the very faint thickness around her cheeks and chin that hint at her history of snacking. As she leaves the bathroom, she reflects on her situation. Of course she's gaining weight. How could it be any other way? For the last 2 years, she's been in lockdown during a pandemic, and she's barely left her apartment. She let her gym membership lapse, and instead of cycling to work, she's instead taking the easy way out by just driving. And it's not like she gets much exercise in her free time either. During these last 2 years of isolation, she's mostly stayed in and watched television. She's discovered a particular love for trashy daytime talk shows and court dramas. Intellectually, she knows that they're the equivalent of junk food, but at the same time, there is a certain mindless charm to them. She would be embarrassed to admit it to any of her friends, but she does enjoy just turning off her brain and absorbing some silly talk show about professional stunt dwarves or Satan-worshipping furry juggalos. That sort of entertainment has been a boon to get her through the tough times. Nevertheless, it's time to make a change. She promises herself that she's going to get into shape. Today, instead of vegging out on the couch, she's going to make an effort. She's going to go out and get some exercise, and she tells herself she's going to watch those extra pounds melt away right before her eyes. She hopes that her old gym clothes will still fit her. After all, she's definitely put on some extra weight since her last trip to the gym. After rummaging through her drawers, she finds what she's looking for: her spandex gym shorts and sports bra. She quickly changes her clothes and is relieved to see that, although they might be a little snugger than she would like, they still fit her pretty well. That's a good sign. She probably won't even have to work very hard to get herself down to her ideal weight. It's all a matter of willpower. she tells herself. I was fit before, so that means I should be able to do it again. All I have to do is avoid temptation. I'll just have to make sure I stay active instead of watching trash TV all day. After all, I don't want to rot my brain too much. On the first day, she actually does an admirable job of sticking to her plan. She cycles to work, enjoying the fresh air and the reassuring post-workout burn in her legs that let her know that she's making progress. She throws away all the junk food in her refrigerator and goes shopping for healthy fruits and vegetables. And, most important of all, she limits her television time. She knows that trashy TV is probably her biggest addiction, even more than junk food, so she needs to be careful of that. On the second day, though, she notices something strange. She starts off with a simple, healthy breakfast, just some granola and a glass of juice. It's barely enough to satisfy her, but she knows that she has to make sacrifices if she expects to actually lose any weight. After breakfast, she decides to go out for a jog. As she's out on the street, she's overcome with sudden hunger. Of course, that's to be expected. She's on a diet now, so it's going to take some time to adjust to these smaller meals. She puts her hand to her rumbling stomach and grimaces. She's never felt this hungry before. If she didn't know better, she would think that she hadn't eaten for a week with the amount of pain that she's feeling. In fact, she's actually starting to feel a little woozy, and she has to lean against a light post to keep from fainting. She shakes her head to clear her thoughts. Okay, she thinks, I must have misjudged how many calories I need to get me through a morning. Her eyes stray to a nearby coffee shop. She sighs in relief. She thinks to herself, I'll just pop in there and get myself a small snack, just a little something to keep my blood sugar up. She walks into the cafe and gets in line. As she waits, she can't help but stare at the rows of pastries on display under the glass. They all look delicious, and she is really hungry. She fully intends to only get a bagel with a little smear of cream cheese, but when she gets to the counter, she finds herself ordering way too much food. I'd like 2 scones, 3 danishes, and a bear claw, she says. Also a large super raspberry frappuccino with extra syrup and whipped cream. The words just tumble out of her mouth, almost as if it's not her saying them, but rather some other voice speaking through her mouth. What the? I didn't say that, she stammers. The clerk behind the counter eyes her strangely, and the young woman feels too embarrassed to protest further. She steps aside and waits for her order, pondering the strange event that just happened. Is she possessed? She's not a superstitious person, but she can't think of any other explanation for what just happened. She can admit to herself that she has broken down and lost to temptation over a tasty snack in the past, but this is ridiculous. Eventually, when the clerk hands her the order, she rationalizes the whole thing away. I must just be having a hunger hallucination, she says to herself. Obviously, I need to be a little more careful about not being so strict about my diet. I'm sure if I just eat sensibly, I won't have an experience like that again. Her stomach grumbles again, reminding her of the original reason why she stepped into this coffee shop. She retreats to a table in the corner and tears open the bag. She wolfs down her pastries with gusto and slurps at her rich, creamy drink. When she's finished, she sighs in satisfaction, although the uncomfortable full feeling in her belly reminds her of her predicament. She only meant to eat enough to keep her from fainting, but instead, she's eating herself silly, and it's only day 2 of the diet. This does not bode well. Okay, she tells herself, this is my last cheat. From now on, I'm going to be serious about this diet. She stands up and leaves the cafe, ready to complete the rest of her jog. But then, something even stranger happens. On the television, the matriarch of the family is furious. She has forbidden her daughter from marrying the gardener because she believes that he is too low class for her high-born daughter. But what she doesn't realize is that her daughter is in love and that she is determined to make it work. The daughter and the gardener have eloped, and the matriarch is hiring a private detective to track them down. Meanwhile, the matriarch's long-lost twin brother, whom she thought died in a plane crash in the tropics, has actually been alive the entire time. He has been in a South American hospital recovering from amnesia, but now he returns to the family estate, ready to claim his share of the inheritance. These events are all noted by the family's shady lawyer, who has big plans to usurp the family fortune himself. Unbeknownst to the family, he is actually secretly working for their mortal enemies and business rivals to destroy them. The young woman laughs, shoving a handful of potato chips into her mouth. Oh man, I wouldn't want to be in their shoes now. That lawyer is playing them all like fiddles. Suddenly, she startles, as if she's just waking up. Where is she? Wasn't she just in that coffee shop? How is it that she's at home? And why is she eating potato chips? She was sure that she threw out all the junk food in the house. She must have bought a bag on her way back home from jogging, but she literally cannot remember it. And what is she doing now? Watching television and eating junk food? In disgust, she grabs the remote and shuts off the TV. She was supposed to be jogging, and instead, she's sitting at home and watching stupid soap operas. The thing that worries her the most is her apparent blackout. She remembers nothing about her trip home from the coffee shop, although the evidence of the potato chip bag indicates that she must have stopped at a convenience store or supermarket on the way home. How could she forget something like that? I really must be having a blood sugar issue, she tells herself reassuringly, even though deep down, she knows that can't be the case. She had the blackout after eating the pastries at the coffee shop, so that can't be the cause. But she really doesn't want to think about that, so she puts it out of her head with a renewed promise to commit to her exercise and fitness program. Over the next few days, she makes a valiant effort to keep her promise. She cycles when she can, she jogs when she remembers, and yet, the blackouts continue. And no matter where she is when she loses her memory, she always recovers in the same place. Back home on her couch, always in the middle of eating some fatty junk food, always staring at the television set. Sure, she's always had an unhealthy television habit, and she knows that trashy talk shows and silly soap operas are her biggest weakness. But it doesn't make any sense that she would be seeking them out when she's in some kind of fugue state, right? As the weeks roll by, the young woman finds that her weight keeps rising. When she steps onto the bathroom scale, she's shocked to see that the dial points to 200 pounds. She's doing everything right, she thinks. How is that possible? How is it possible that she's ballooned up an extra 50 pounds since deciding to slim down? She can't fit into her old gym clothes anymore. She can barely tug the spandex shorts up to her thighs, and even if she could, she's afraid that they're going to split apart. In desperation, she switches to an old stretchy sweatsuit. It's the only thing that she owns that still fits her. This is just a temporary setback, she tells herself as she stares at her bloated reflection in the bathroom mirror. I just have to work harder. And she does. Or does she? When she goes to ride her bike, she finds that it's no longer strong enough to support her weight. She can't perch on the seat comfortably, and the steel body frame starts to creak when she rests her full weight upon it. She steels her resolve. Sure, it might be embarrassing to go out in public wearing an ill-fitting sweatsuit and riding a bike groaning under her bulk, but she really has no choice. This time, she's going to do it. And she probably did ride her bike to work, right? She's not sure. The next thing that she knows, she's back at home, spread across the couch, basking in the comforting glow of the television. The floor is covered in empty bags and cartons, and her face is slathered with crumbs and sauce. The last thing that she remembers is that she was just about to go for a bike ride, but now she's back at home, and it looks like she just completely ruined her diet. She lifts her arm with some effort and stares at her watch. She's lost almost a whole day. That's the longest blackout yet. She must have gone out cycling and made her way home, where she decided to reward herself for her strenuous efforts with a little snack. That's the only logical explanation. She tries to reassure herself that maybe she's past the worst of it, but she finds that these mysterious blackouts keep happening. They happen while she's at work, while she's at the gym, while she's out cycling, but she always comes to in the same place, sitting on her sofa at home, in front of the TV, surrounded by the debris of a massive meal. Again, she wonders if maybe she's having some sort of reaction to her new low-calorie diet. Maybe she's been cutting back so far on her food intake that she's starting to have fainting spells. Maybe her diet food is tainted in some way. But that doesn't explain why she keeps gaining weight. The scale in her bathroom doesn't lie. It keeps reporting higher and higher numbers, and as much as she tries to reassure herself that it must just be broken, her ever-tightening clothes and ever-widening reflection tell her otherwise. Her trips to the gym become less and less frequent, as she finds that other patrons have started to stare and whisper about her. Are they laughing at her for not being able to control her weight? Are they whispering about how her new flab is spilling from the confines of her sweatsuit? She can't even run on the treadmill for more than a few minutes without being completely winded, and she's too wide to balance on her bike now. The young woman has grown absolutely massive, to the point that she completely fills the whole couch. She chews her way through yet another bag of potato chips, her eyes never straying from the ever-chattering television set. She barely moves from the spot, her tremendous girth sinking into a permanent groove in the cushions as the couch springs groan. She barely notices, however, because she's much too intent on enjoying herself. She loves to eat, and every bite brings her untold joy, her taste buds tingling with delight. She is constantly full, so much so that she feels slightly sick, so bloated that she feels like she might just burst, but she's powerless to resist the siren call of junk food. She scarfs down entire boxes of cookies and cartons of ice cream without a thought, having turned into the very definition of a mindless eater. Only occasionally does she rouse herself from this stupor of gorging, to reach for her telephone, to order more takeout or more grocery delivery, always choosing the most calorie-laden options. Other than eating, her attention is completely devoted to her television set. She watches a constant stream of daytime talk shows, laughing along with the studio audience as the hosts parade out an assortment of society's biggest freaks. Sometimes she'll switch the channel to watch soap operas, becoming so wrapped up in the ridiculous plot twists and melodramatic acting that she completely forgets the passage of time. Her bicycle stands propped against the wall in the hallway, completely forgotten and untouched now for months. At this point, all thoughts of losing weight have utterly evaporated, and all that she cares about is satisfying her appetites for junk food and junk television. One day, she suddenly shakes her head and looks down at herself in horror, as if seeing herself for the first time. "What the?" she says in disbelief. She drops her half-eaten carton of ice cream and grabs at her fleshy middle with her hands, as if to make sure that it's all her and not some kind of crazy dream. Her hands sink deep into her new flesh, and she realizes to her shock that indeed she has eaten herself into morbid obesity. "How is this possible? I can't be this big. I was only... Her words trail off as the sound of an organ sting from the soap opera on TV diverts her attention. Within seconds, her eyes have glazed over, and her hands move to pick up the dropped carton of ice cream. Her worries about her growing size forgotten, she's now only concerned with watching until the next commercial break. It might seem unbelievable that someone could undergo such a startling physical and mental transformation, but what that young woman experienced has led to her being classified by the Foundation as SCP-2611. SCP-2611 is, as you might have expected, a young woman currently weighing approximately 500 pounds. Her mobility is limited due to her weight, although SCP staff encourage her to take light exercise whenever possible, in hopes of preventing her mobility from deteriorating further. She also suffers from several health issues related to her weight and lifestyle, including diabetes, for which she is receiving treatment by Foundation personnel. Her awareness of her situation and surroundings is severely limited, as she spends most of her time in a stupor, but when she is lucid, she believes that she is in a special facility receiving treatment for her weight problem. In reality, SCP-2611 is under observation because of SCP-2611-1. SCP-2611-1 is a mass of sentient fat located on SCP-2611's left side. SCP-2611-1 has become integrated with several of SCP-2611's vital organs, making it too dangerous to attempt to remove SCP-2611-1 via liposuction or other means. SCP-2611-1 has gradually exerted increasing control over the mind and actions of its host, to the point that SCP-2611 is only fully conscious for 1 to 2 hours daily. The rest of the time, SCP-2611-1 is fully in control of its host's behavior. Prior to coming to the SCP facility, SCP-2611-1 influenced its host to consume massive amounts of calories, leading to the mysterious and sudden weight gain that we observed earlier. This was possibly an attempt by SCP-2611-1 to increase its own size and influence, but as of yet, its reasons, as well as how it exerts control over its host, are unknown. When in control, SCP-2611-1 can speak through its host, communicating in standard American English. SCP-2611's access to food has been limited since her arrival at the Foundation, so as to prevent her weight gain from accelerating to dangerous levels. Other than eating, SCP-2611-1's main interest appears to be daytime television. Attempts to communicate with SCP-2611-1 have so far met with little success due to the anomaly's limited attention span for anything other than the minutiae of daytime television. In a conversation with one researcher, however, SCP-2611-1 let slip that it preferred daytime television to the programming watched by, quote, that other guy, suggesting that it lived inside a different host before it eventually took up residence within the body of SCP-2611. At another point, while in the middle of a conversation about a court drama, SCP-2611-1 suddenly announced, kill it now, I don't care if I die." Staff believe that this might not have been SCP-2611-1 at all, but rather the voice of SCP-2611 trying to break through the hypnotic control of her parasite to call for help. At this time, no drastic action is recommended until further observations can be made. SCP-2611-1 does not appear to be contagious, and the way that it bonds with the host is unknown, so it is currently classified as safe. At the moment, SCP-2611-1 is the only known instance of its kind. However, considering rising levels of obesity worldwide, it is not unfathomable to think that there could be countless other instances influencing the behavior of other hosts to dedicate their lives to consuming food and television. Who knows? It's not like most of us would need that much convincing. You and your friends exit a club and step onto the darkened city street. Everyone is in a happy and joyful mood. It's been a great night, one that you'll be reminiscing about with your friends for years. As you walk and laugh together,
You don't notice the large man standing in front of you and almost run straight into him. You offer a quick apology and move to go around the man, but he steps in front of you, blocking your path. All of your friends grow quiet, and you finally take a good look at the man. The man towers over you. He is huge, with giant, elaborate tattoos wrapped around his bulging muscles that it looks like he may have gotten to cover up the numerous white patches of skin that are missing pigmentation. His face, though, is bright red and filled with rage. The man begins screaming at you, asking why you ran into him and calling you horrible names. Again, you try to apologize, but the man just keeps yelling as if he can't even hear you. He pushes you hard in the chest, and you fall back into one of your friends. Another steps forward in an attempt to defuse the situation, but the man punches him in the face, breaking his jaw. A melee ensues, though it could more accurately be described as a massacre. The man has gone ballistic and punches, kicks, and bites your entire group of friends. His strength seems unreal, even for someone as big and muscular as him. A large bouncer runs over in an attempt to break up the fight, but even he is no match for this tattooed giant. You've been on the ground since he shoved you, watching this insanity play out, but now, with everyone else lying on the ground bloodied and bruised, he turns his attention back on you. You try to scramble back to your feet, but he's upon you in an instant. He picks you up over his head and tosses you into some trash cans, knocking you unconscious. You open your eyes to see the man standing over you. You can feel the blood from numerous cuts on your face running down into your eyes and mouth. The man picks you up with one hand and holds you by the throat against the wall. He's still in a rage, breathing hard through clenched teeth, bits of white foaming in the corners of his mouth as he brings up his other hand and curls his fingers into a fist. All you can think is this it? But then you notice something. The tattoo that snakes down the man's arm all the way to his hand is moving. The long serpentine dragon is writhing and slithering as if it's alive. Is this really happening, or just a result of the concussive trauma you've received? There's no time to consider it further, though, as the man pulls back and throws a punch right into your face. You can feel your nose flatten and break from the impact, which understandably distracts you from the bizarre occurrence that follows. Right as the man's bloodied fist makes contact with your face, the dragon on his arm seems to swim off of his skin and onto yours. Like a snake moving through water, it glides off his fist onto your face before sliding down your neck onto your body. There is a searing pain as it moves, like you're being poked with needles over and over. You scream from the pain, blood from your broken nose pouring out of your mouth. The man drops you to the ground and steps back. He no longer looks to be in a rage, and instead looks confused. He looks down at his skin to find that the tattoo is completely gone. A look of unbridled joy comes over his face, and he turns and runs away into the night, laughing with glee as he does so. You are left whimpering in pain, curled up in a ball in the pile of trash where he left you, the dragon tattoo now covering your entire body. As you have probably already guessed, this is no normal tattoo. No, this is an anomalous creature that is known to the SCP Foundation as SCP-021, but it also has another name: the skin worm. SCP-021 is an obligate parasite that uses the human body as a host. Its visual appearance is in the form of a large, elaborate tattoo of an Oriental-style dragon, which covers roughly 1 square meter of its host's skin. What makes this tattoo truly unique is that it is fully animated and moves on the host's body just as a real animal would, though in 2D like a cartoon playing out in real time on their skin. The movement of the tattoo causes horrendous pain for the host, and has been described as feeling like thousands of tiny needles are stabbing at them all at once, as if a fresh image is being constantly tattooed on their skin, while at the same time, a tattoo removal process is happening. While the tattoo organism is able to move, it seems to prefer spending most of its time on its host's torso, though it has been seen to move around to other parts of the body on occasion. As SCP-021 moves around on the surface of its host's body, it appears to feed on the pigments in the skin. Its favored meal seems to be other tattoos, which it will seek out and devour, though if none are present, or if it has eaten all of the tattoos on its host, it will begin consuming the melanin from the skin instead. Melanin is a naturally occurring pigment found in human skin, and after SCP-021 sucks it from its host, it will leave them with permanent skin damage and patches of unpigmented skin that appear similar to that of the skin condition vitiligo. The feeding itself does not appear to cause the host any pain, and the pigments, whether they are from another tattoo or the natural ones in the skin, will simply disappear as 021 eats them. The pace at which SCP-021 feeds will vary, but it has been observed as being able to clear over half a square meter of skin in roughly 1 hour. One way to prevent SCP-021 from eating all of the melanin present on a human is to quickly add new tattoos of fruits or small animals as a way to continually distract it from turning to the melanin. Thus far, outside of motion, the organism has displayed no elevated intelligence or the ability to communicate. It simply moves and feeds. SCP-021 is not permanently affixed to the skin of any one host, and in fact, can be transferred back and forth between hosts multiple times. The only way to transfer the organism is through physical contact, though skin-to-skin contact does not guarantee that the organism will take to a new host. In the event that it does, the dragon tattoo appears to swim across the touching skin and will affix itself to the new human host. Skin-to-skin contact in the romantic sense has been shown to be the most reliable method of transfer from one host to another, with a 93% rate of successful transmission. However, as you can imagine, the tattooing sensation that comes along with any movement of SCP-021 means that this particular transfer is extremely painful for all parties involved, and the Foundation has deemed that despite its high success rate, it should only be used when absolutely necessary. Contact between two open wounds has been shown to be an only slightly less effective method, and has become the default means of transferring when the SCP Foundation wants to move SCP-021 from one host to another. Transferring the organism from a deceased host to a living one is possible, though more complicated. SCP-021 appears not to mind when its host organism is no longer alive, continuing to feed on whatever pigments are available to it, and does not seem to suffer any ill effect from the condition of its host. It is as yet unknown whether SCP-021 could be transferred to another species. So far, the organism has only been willing to move from human to human, though research into the question is ongoing. It's theorized that if SCP-021 is able to exist on a non-human animal, it would only occur in the rarest of circumstances. Unlike most parasites, SCP-021 does offer some small but tangible benefits to its host human. In addition to hosts of the organism appearing to have an improved immune system, research has also shown that the presence of 021 will increase its host's release and reuptake of epinephrine, better known as adrenaline. It will also decrease the buildup of lactic acid, which is what builds up in the muscles during activity and causes burning sensations and soreness. Combined, these benefits from SCP-021 provide its host with increased strength and confidence, as well as give a heightened pain tolerance during stressful situations. Not surprisingly, the host of SCP-021 also displays a high level of aggression, though whether this comes from their elevated hormone levels or simply because the organism causes them to be in constant pain is still an unanswered question. The amount of time that this symbiotic relationship can be sustained is typically limited to how long the host can tolerate the unceasing pain of the tattoo moving about their body. The persistent agony that a host of SCP-021 endures has led to multiple hosts having taken their own lives, and in a few rare cases, they have also succumbed to fatal skin infections, though these were likely the result of open wounds caused by the hosts scratching at their own skin, rather than anything directly attributable to the organism. SCP-021 is currently contained on the body of a D-Class personnel, D-139, who is housed in Standard Detention Cell 217A, and the relative ease with which it can be kept on a human subject's body has led to it receiving the Safe classification. Only D-Class personnel are eligible to be a host to SCP-021, and current operating procedure is to allow the organism to live on the same host's body until they expire. The exact nature of what SCP-021 is, as well as its origins, remain a mystery to the Foundation. Attempts have been made to trace the path of its transmission from before its time in containment, and it is hypothesized that the organism could be many hundreds of years old, if not older. As evidenced by its low SCP number, 021 is one of the oldest SCPs that the Foundation keeps contained, and it has proven to be a very useful educational tool for new and upcoming researchers as they study this bizarre creature and its existence that occurs entirely within 2 dimensions.
As you can clearly see, this completely throws our entire understanding of our place in the universe into complete disarray, says the astronomer as he excitedly makes his case to a panel of aged and supposedly learned advisors.
My observations leave no doubt that everything we previously suspected to be the absolute truth is wrong. The panel of advisors murmur and lean close together to whisper to each other. The astronomer can't hear what they are saying, but the passion and joy that he felt as he explained his findings to the room is quickly draining from his face. He can see the men mouthing the words "no" and "lies" as they make disapproving gestures. But how could this be? Had they not understood what he was showing them? Maybe he didn't explain things in a way that they could comprehend. Here he was, the greatest scientist of his day, presenting hard facts, backed up by rigorous observations, and this was their reaction. The group of advisors finish conferring and grow quiet. The chief advisor clears his throat, and everyone in the room waits for him to speak. Royal Scientist, this panel has examined your findings and listened to your theories. The advisor can't help but sneer at the word, and has decided that the ideas you present are not only incorrect, but dangerous. The astronomer can't believe what he's hearing. This panel, acting under the authority of the king, has charged you with the crime of heresy. The astronomer is shocked. He steps towards the panel to plead with them, but he's stopped by a pair of guards who grab him by the arms. Stop! Stop! I'm a man of science. I only presented you with the truth. But no one seems moved by his appeals. The panel watches as the astronomer is dragged from the room, kicking and fighting, still insisting on his innocence. The screams echo through the dungeon as the torturer cranks another notch on the rack, stretching the astronomer's body just a little bit more. He has no idea how long this has been going on. Hours, days. The pain has been excruciating and without end. He closes his eyes, trying to escape the torture by retreating into his mind, but he's slapped on the face and brought back to the reality of his situation. Standing in front of him is the chief advisor, the same one who sentenced him to this inhumane treatment. You can end this any time you like. Simply recant your statements and admit you were mistaken, and all of this will be over. The astronomer is unsure if by over he means that they will release him or simply kill him to put him out of his misery. But it didn't matter which the right answer was. He couldn't lie. The astronomer knew the truth, and no amount of pain, no matter how intense or how long they submitted him to it, would change what he now knew. Disappointed with the astronomer's steadfastness, the advisor signals to the torturer, who cranks the rack again, stretching the astronomer's body to the point where he feels like his bones might pop out of their sockets. "Recant!" the advisor screams, repeating the word over and over, growing louder as the astronomer's own cries increase from the pain caused by the torturer cranking the rack more and more. The astronomer closes his eyes again. He's certain this will be the end of him soon, and that he will die with the great secret he's learned without getting the chance to share it with the world. But suddenly, the astronomer notices that the room has gone quiet. The advisor is no longer yelling, and the torturer has stopped operating the machine. The astronomer opens his eyes to see the advisor and the torturer both in a deep bow. His gaze continues up and he sees the king himself standing in front of him. The king stares at the astronomer for what feels like an eternity before simply asking, "Is it true?" The astronomer, limbs still stretched on the rack, manages a nod, and with his remaining strength whispers, "It's true." The king motions with his hand to the torturer, who stands up and begins releasing the astronomer from his constraints. The advisor protests, "But my lord, this man—" But he's cut off by the king with a stern look and retreats back into his deep bow. "Show me," the king says as the astronomer stands, rubbing his sore shoulders where the tendons and muscles were stretched far beyond their natural limits. The astronomer opens the door to his laboratory and gestures for the king to enter. The room is a mess of papers and scientific equipment, a reflection of the busy and scattered mind of the man who works here. The king is immediately drawn to a table with a large scroll. He spreads it across the table and examines it, but his face betrays no hint of what he is thinking. "Is this what you showed my advisors?" The astronomer nods yes. "Would you like to see for yourself?" The astronomer motions to the window, where a brass tube is attached to a tripod. The king approaches the device, but doesn't know how it works. The astronomer demonstrates by looking through the eyepiece. He moves it slightly, making small adjustments to make sure it is just right for the king. "There, now look." The king bends over to peer through the telescope, and a look of shock comes over his face. What he sees is the most incredible thing he has ever witnessed. There, far above up in the sky, unable to be seen by the naked eye, is a man, and he is staring back at him. The planet that this played out on was not Earth, but a bizarre place that is one of the strangest anomalies in the entire SCP Foundation archive. This is SCP-007, also known as Abdominal Planet. SCP-007 is a spherical object located in the abdomen of a young man, or rather, in the space where his abdomen should be, since most of the muscle, skin, and organs that should be present simply are not. The subject, a Caucasian male in his mid-20s of average height and build, does not appear affected by the large missing portion of his body, and has not reported experiencing pain or discomfort of any kind. In the space where his abdominal muscles and organs should be is a small globe composed of soil and water. This sphere, which measures roughly 60 centimeters in diameter, resembles the planet Earth, though the arrangement of the continents does not match any known configuration from our own planet's history. The tiny planet has its own weather patterns, and even a small, but still detectable, gravitational pull. Perhaps the most fascinating aspect of SCP-007 is that it appears to be inhabited. Microscopic organisms that would correspond to roughly the scale of human beings on Earth have been observed on the surface of the planet. So far, 2 distinct intelligent species have been identified, both of whom seem to possess a technological level similar to the 15th century on Earth. It is unknown if the inhabitants of the Abdominal Planet are aware of the world outside of their planet, and communication attempts with the planet's occupants have been placed on hold by senior Foundation officials, pending further study into what effect an exchange may have on them or us. The human subject within which SCP-007 is located provided the Foundation with a name that he claims to be his, but no records of such a person existing have yet to be located. Upon being questioned about the lack of records, he willfully offered both a social security and driver's license number, but when they were checked against current records, neither had yet to be assigned by the US government. And the mysteries surrounding this man don't stop there. The subject has not shown the need for either food or water, and it is unknown what energy source his body continues to operate on without nutrition. He is capable of both eating and drinking, though, despite the large missing section of his stomach, but it is still not known what happens to the substances after he swallows them. The man has above-average intelligence and scored a 128 on an administered IQ test. He also generally appears friendly and amiable, and expresses only a passing curiosity about the planet located within his abdomen and how it came to be there. When asked about the origins of the planet, he replied very matter-of-factly that, "I just woke up one day and there it was. I don't have any idea how it got there." Due to the poorly understood nature of SCP-007, it has been classified as Euclid, and the small planet and the man it resides in are contained in a sealed, comfortably furnished 10 by 10 meter room that the subject is not allowed to leave. The subject is to be monitored closely by Foundation staff and has a weekly chess game with one of the attending doctors, which also serves as an opportunity to evaluate his mental health. So far, he has not shown any signs of mental illness or violent tendencies, and seems to be quite content. In general, he appears happy with his restricted living situation inside the Foundation facility and has made no attempts to escape. The subject has made multiple requests for access to a computer with an internet connection, but due to potential security risks, this request has thus far been denied.
It's never a nice feeling waking up lying amongst shards of broken glass in the middle of the road. The dawn sky above the biker looks almost peaceful. It's as if nothing had gone wrong at all, as if everything is right in the world. But slowly, the throbbing pain washes into his helmeted head, and the sound of the traffic surrounding him rises in his ears. A sea of onlookers gathers around as the cars blast their horns. Through the cracked visor of his helmet, the biker can see concerned faces, people calling emergency services, and a few women crying. His paramedic bike is toppled on its side about 40 feet from him. There are long black tire marks running up to where it lies, smoking slightly on its side. With a groan, the biker sits himself up and shakes his head. Bad idea. Looking around, though, it seems he's the only one injured. His bike had gone into the front of a car at the junction. The occupants of the car stand by nervously, offering him whatever little assistance they can. But there's no time for that, the biker suddenly realizes. He looks down at his watch frantically. It's 12:03 p.m. There's not enough time. He rushes over to the bike as fast as he can and lifts it back upright. A couple of onlookers try to grab his arms, trying to sit down to rest, But he can't. There's no time. He has just 3 minutes to get to St. Mary's Hospital in central London. Right now, he's at the junction outside Baker Street Station. He can still make it on time if he gets on his bike and goes now. The biker swings his leg onto the bike and kicks it into life. He takes a deep gulp and looks over his shoulder at the box on the back of his bike. He can't risk opening it here. The damage may already be done. But if the heart is still alive in that box, it is the only chance that a 10-year-old boy has for a normal life. If he doesn't get to the hospital in the next 3 minutes, his life could be over. The school children stand in a circle, looking down at the dead bird with a morbid fascination.
Do you think it's alive? No way.
The boy in the middle of the group goes to pick up a stick. With an air of false confidence, he walks up to the bird and gives it a prod. It makes a squelching noise. The other kids all reel in shock, making retching noises and laughing about it. It's only when their teacher comes out to call them inside that the group disperses, leaving the animal carcass alone, sitting at the edge of the playground, outside the view of boring adults. Each passing day, the kids wander over to the bird's body. It's kind of the best biology lesson they've ever had as they watch the animal slowly decompose. At first, its body just shrinks, goes flat almost. The feathers start falling out, and it loses all of its color. Then it starts to get puffy. Different parts of its flesh bulge out in weird places, as if they're being inflated like a balloon animal at someone's birthday party. But then, the maggots come. There are only a couple of tiny white crawling wrigglers in the bird's body at first, but a couple of days after that, it's infested with them. The creepy crawlies wriggle all over the body. But as the boy looks down at the dead bird, he spots something very peculiar, something they haven't seen in a biology class before. There's a red maggot, wriggling and crawling in amongst the rest of the creepy crawlies. It squirms like the rest of them, but even over the course of the school day, it quickly grows larger than any of the others.
What do you think it is?
The boy stares at it.
It looks like a worm.
And a worm is exactly what it was. The next day, when the kids return, they see that the red maggot is now much larger than any of the others feasting on the bird. With a slightly translucent body, cherry red coloring, and small white speckles on its skin, it looks unlike anything they've ever seen before. Actually, not unlike anything they've ever seen before. It looks exactly like something that all the kids recognize very well. In fact, one of the kids has a bag of them right now that he's chewing on. A candied worm. The kids stare in curiosity, first at the bag of candy that their friend has in his hand, and then down at the worm, slowly eating its way through the decomposing bird. As far as their eyes can tell, the two things are exactly the same. Except, of course, that the one eating the bird seems to be alive. Kids being kids, the next thing that happened was sort of inevitable. One dares the boy to eat it. He almost retches in disgust. There's no way he's even touching it. And then, another one of the children throws down the poison chalice and dares him. The boy stands there nervously. He knows that he's not allowed to eat worms. That had been a lesson ingrained in him from a very young age. But his mother isn't here right now, and this thing doesn't look like any kind of worm that he's seen before. It almost looks a bit tasty. In exchange for eating the worm, another one of the children promises he'll give him 5 English pounds. The kids around the circle gasp. That's a lot of money. None of them have even got 2 pounds on them, let alone 5. Think of all the sweets you could buy with that kind of money. But the boy is adamant. He puffs his chest out, he stands up tall, and he nods firmly. 5 pounds, or he wouldn't do it. After some intense schoolyard debate, the deal is sealed. As the boy lies in bed that night, staring at the ceiling and grumbling, he knows that he is not happy about what his friends have done to him today. He's going to get them back for this. Only he's getting a bit of a tummy ache. Getting is the wrong word. He's had a tummy ache for most of the evening. What he's experiencing now is heartburn. It feels as if something is crawling in his chest. The boy just ignores it. It's probably just his worries about the worm inside of him. He chewed it up pretty well. There's no way that it's still alive in him, surely. His uneasy sleep is punctuated by rotten dreams. Dreams in which he finds himself lying on the floor and his playground lying on the ground at school, unable to move as people gather around him to poke him with a stick. He feels his skin covered with maggots. They even crawl across the surface of his eyes. In his chest, there's a searing pain. The boy wakes with a start as he feels his heart pounding, thudding against his ribs. It's agonizing. Adrenaline courses through him as he sweats off his face. Crying out for his mom, the boy lies there in bed, feeling the heart attacking his system. When you decide to become a surgeon, you have to accept that you're not going to get very much sleep most nights. In fact, it's more than that. You have to not only accept that you won't get much sleep most nights, but you also have to be at your absolute best when you've had no sleep and it's the middle of the night. With over 40 years under his belt, the surgeon doesn't need coffee anymore, even when the junior doctor offers it to him as he strides toward the operating theater. Instead, he asks them to fill him in on the situation. Who's his patient? What's going on? What needs to be done? The doctor accompanying him reads the notes in a calm but hurried voice. They haven't got much time on this one at all. At any moment, the boy's heart could give out. The surgeon asks what's wrong with the organ, and the doctor looks at his notes in apparent confusion. Apparently, over the course of the night, the boy has suffered a 72% reduction in the mass of his heart. The surgeon stops just on the other side of the door. He doesn't want to have this conversation in front of his whole team. He whispers to the doctor in a terse voice, "What kind of infection does this boy have that his heart has undergone that rapid of a deterioration?" "It's not an infection at all, sir. Well, sir, it's a worm." The doctor holds out a sheet to him. The surgeon takes it from him. He looks down at the x-ray to see a scan of the boy's chest cavity. It doesn't look so bad. There's a hole in the heart for sure, but the surgeon has encountered worse in his career. "This was taken when the boy was first admitted." The doctor hands the surgeon a second x-ray. "And this was taken just 1 hour later." It is barely recognizable as a human heart. There seems to be a mass growing in the cavity that was left by the heart, and there, infecting all of the boy's organs, was the shape of a worm. The biker weaves his way through the traffic down on Marylebone Road, eyes darting frantically in all directions. He may have a concussion, and he may not be allowed to drive at all right now. In fact, he knows he definitely isn't. But he is under strict instructions. This heart needs to get to St. Mary's Hospital before it's too late. The bike careens around the corner and skids to a halt outside the emergency doors. An ambulance team in front of him is trying to help an old lady out of the back of their vehicle, but the biker doesn't have time for them. He grabs the organ box from the back of the bike and races into the building. It takes all of his remaining concentration to navigate through the maze of hospital corridors on his way to the operating theater. On a better day, he'd be able to do this with no problem, but with his head injury, he can see the lights starting to blur all around him. Ward 6, Ward 7, Ward 7A, Ward 7B. He runs as fast as his heavy boots will allow him, feeling that energy draining from his system. He can't look at his watch. He can't check the time. He just has to find this boy. Operating theater, there, right up ahead of him, just a couple of 100 feet. There's a doctor waiting outside the door who looks up at the sound of his footsteps. The biker rips his helmet off and holds out the box with the heart in it, panting heavily. It's the moment of truth. Is he too late? The doctor looks shell-shocked, not at the biker's arrival, but clearly at something else she's just seen. The man starts to explain, but runs out of words, and instead beckons the biker to follow him into the observation room. There, the two of them stand looking through the glass at the little boy lying on the operating table with the surgeon standing over him. There's something in the air. The biker sniffs, confused. "Can anyone else smell sugar?" Next time you open a packet of candied worms, take a second to look through the little creepy crawlies in the bag. Perhaps poke a couple of them, just to see if any of them are moving. You can never be too careful. If you had told the parents of that young boy on the night when their son woke up with heart palpitations, telling stories of eating a worm at school, that the only health concerns he would have going forward were mild diabetes and a slightly raised level of blood sugar, I'm sure they would have been thrilled to hear it. You see, SCP-839, commonly referred to within the Foundation as candied worms, is much scarier on the surface than it is underneath. Not only does this SCP resemble your usual candy worm, but its body is actually composed of sugar flavorings and colorings, roughly equivalent to what you would find in most convenience store candy aisles. Each instance even has a small raised bit of writing near the tail specifying which flavor it is. While the origins of these worms are yet to be determined, cases have sprung up across much of the Western world, with higher numbers reported in areas with higher levels of diabetes. There seems to be a parallel between high-sugar diets and the presence of SCP-839. Whether they are of man-made or other origins is yet to be determined. That is not to say that SCP-839 cannot survive outside of human populations. This SCP in the wild primarily feeds on decomposing organic matter and is capable of sustaining itself on a purely vegetarian diet. However, when ingested into the human body, SCP-839 will target specific organs and burrow its way towards them. The organ in question depends on which color Candied worm the SCP instance is. For example, the red cherry-flavored Candied worms will burrow towards the heart and consume that, while the blue raspberry ones will instead feed on the human's kidney. One would expect the health consequences of this feeding to be severe. However, as the SCP feeds, it will also change its own shape and chemical composition until the worm itself becomes a substitute organ for the one that it is consuming. However, this substitute organ is not a perfect replacement, as other health consequences are derived from its presence. For example, the green apple-flavored SCP-839-3 targets the eye and replaces it with a jelly-green version of the human eye. While this eye is mostly capable of sight, subjects have reported mild hallucinations and blurriness of vision, as well as a greenish tint to how they see the world. Fortunately for the Foundation, SCP-839 reproduces sexually, meaning that individual instances require a partner in order to have offspring. This has made containment of this SCP much more feasible. Though they are a relatively low-priority entity in the broader scope of the Foundation, there are no known cases as of yet of any SCP-839 infections leading to death or serious chronic illness. Therefore, any instances that are captured by the Foundation are sent to Storage Site 839-1, where they are kept in a glass housing and regularly fed a diet of plant matter each day. Here, their reproductive activity can be closely monitored and controlled based on what research is needed. Those infected with SCP-839 instances can continue to live long and healthy lives, with only minor health complications arising. Therefore, the Foundation is comfortable allowing a reasonable number of cases to go unexamined in the world. So, like I said, for next time you open up a bag of Candied worms, maybe just give them a quick poke. You could be saving yourself a trip to the hospital and a lifetime dependence on insulin.
It's Saturday night, and a teenaged boy and girl are out on a date. They are strolling through a shopping mall with plans to see a movie later at the theater attached to the mall. As they walk through the mall waiting for their show to start, the girl spots something. It's a photo booth. She excitedly grabs the boy's hand and pulls him inside. They close the curtain, insert a coin, and the machine comes to life, snapping a series of photos. The two exit the booth, but both seem to be a little off. It's getting close to showtime, though, so they start making their way to the movie theater. Meanwhile, unbeknownst to the mall patrons, something is happening deep below the ground. The boy and girl exit the theater and walk arm in arm through the alley back toward the parking lot where the boy left his car. It's late now. The sun has long since set, and they're all alone. But they don't hear the footsteps behind them, or sense the pair of bodies that are following them, getting closer and closer. They get to the car. It's the only one left in the parking lot, and the boy takes out his keys to unlock the car when he fumbles and drops them to the ground. As he bends over to pick them up, he finally sees who has been following them. It's them, a pair of doppelgangers coming straight towards them. They look exactly like the boy and girl, except for their faces, which are horribly distorted, with strange lumps and no eyes or mouths. They look as though they were a drawing of a face that was somehow smudged out. The boy quickly gets the keys and grabs the girl, dragging her away from the creatures, who are now reaching for the boy and girl, grasping and clawing at their faces as they try to moan through their skin-covered mouths. He gets the car unlocked, and both manage to get inside. As the creatures bang on the windows, the boy starts the engine and drives away, leaving the abominations behind. Hi, I'm Dr. Bob, and this is SCP-715, also known as My Face That I May Be. SCP-715 is a take-your-own-photo brand photo booth, a product of the Sony Corporation made in the 1970s. This is a standard-looking photo booth, bearing a close resemblance to the many thousands of others that were in operation around the world at the time, with no anomalous visual characteristics at all. The only detail setting this machine apart from its countless brethren is a small metal tag, which has been added to the back of the machine at some point, but a significant amount of wear has made it impossible to read what, if anything, was ever stamped on the tag. SCP-715's basic operation is also not anomalous in appearance. It will only activate if an individual sits inside and inserts the required coinage, at which point it will take a series of photos, just like a normal photo booth. The photos will also appear normal, though often some will be heavily distorted and obscure the subject's face in various ways. What truly sets this photo booth apart, however, is what happens outside of the booth when the pictures are taken. While the individuals who had their photos taken, classified as SCP-715-B instances, are able to exit the booth with no obvious effects, below them all, deep underground, something truly terrifying takes place. Underneath the mall is Site 81715, an extra-dimensional space which is accessible through a mall maintenance service door located in Sub-Basement 3, a door that does not appear on any of the mall's structural blueprints or in other records. The site consists of a giant cavernous room, which appears to have been hewn right out of the surrounding limestone. In the middle of the room is its most distinguishing feature, a large, deep pit. The walls of the pit are made of an unidentified substance, though it appears similar in both appearance and composition to human fat tissue. These fleshy walls secrete a powerful, corrosive substance, which makes examination and exploration of the pit particularly dangerous. When SCP-715 is activated in the mall above, a humanoid creature, classified as SCP-715-A, will appear in this pit. The bodies of these creatures are similar in appearance to the individuals who had their picture taken inside of 715, but their faces are radically different. Each has severe facial disfigurements and abnormalities, such as large growths, deep lacerations, and the absence of facial features. After appearing in the pit, these SCP-715-A instances will attempt to scale the fleshy walls of the pit and leave Site 81715. These instances are considered hostile, and Foundation security personnel are authorized to neutralize the creatures by any means necessary. Further research into how the SCP-715-A entities are formed and what exactly the pit is are ongoing, and it's not currently known how many 715-A instances exist down in the pit. With the entities who were able to climb out of the pit able to be relatively easily neutralized by security forces, SCP-715 was originally classified as safe. It was contained at its point of origin within the mall in Ohio, and Foundation personnel posing as mall employees would collect the photos printed by the machine. However, following additional discoveries, this classification necessitated changing. The Foundation began noticing inconsistencies with SCP-715-B entities after a researcher tested SCP-715 himself by sitting inside and having his photo taken. Soon after, he began acting in ways that were considered strange, such as when he turned down a promotion to a prominent position with better pay and perks for seemingly no reason, and when he skipped a mandatory site inspection for reality-bending anomalies. After noticing these strange behaviors, a Foundation research head had an anomalous optical enhancement device placed in the oddly acting researcher's bedroom and learned a surprising truth about the SCP-715-A and B entities. The Foundation had been killing the wrong ones. The device, which could remove anomalous reality-distorting effects from images, showed that the researcher was actually one of the creatures from the pit, with the telltale facial distortions. Following this shocking revelation, the research head used the same device on the creatures still inside the pit underneath the mall. They found that when the anomalous visual effects were removed from the distorted creatures who were trying to get out of the fleshy pit, that they were actually normal-looking humans. These SCP-715-A entities were the human beings who had entered the photo booth, had their pictures taken, and were somehow transported to the pit. They had been trying to escape their prison and tell the Foundation who they really were, but this only resulted in them being terminated by the on-site security forces. In order to fix this mistake, SCP-715 was hastily reclassified as Keter, and SCP-715 was removed from the mall in order to be stored in a secure locker at Site-19. Research personnel were no longer able to access SCP-715 without special authorization, and study of the interior was limited to what could be done via remote drone use only. The Foundation began rounding up all known instances of SCP-715-B, who were now the ones subjected to immediate termination. Foundation staff did manage to interview one 715-B instance, though, who had been previously believed to be a fellow Foundation researcher. It is unknown exactly what the researcher doppelganger said in that interview, but it must have been extremely serious, as the end result was another complete change in protocol. All attempts to contain and neutralize instances of SCP-715-B would immediately cease, since if there were as many out in the world as the doppelganger claimed, then ultimately, it would better maintain normalcy and ensure the secrecy of SCP-715 if they were allowed to go free. Sadly, the same was not the case for the SCP-715-A instances that still existed down in the pit. The researcher doppelganger advised that it would be unwise to remove them from the pit, and the current Foundation policy is that down in the pit is where they will remain. Following this interview, SCP-715 was reclassified once again as safe. The photo booth was also moved again, this time to a maximum security storage locker at Site-81, and Foundation personnel have been prohibited from interacting with SCP-715-B instances at all. However, there is one more piece of information about SCP-715, and it is only accessible to those with proper security clearance. Another Foundation agent was found to actually be an instance of SCP-715-B and taken into custody for observation. While under surveillance, it was discovered that this instance, classified as SCP-715-B7, was emitting low-level radiation that was somehow directed at Site-81-715, the location of the pit. During an autopsy of the creature, it was found that the radioactive emissions were actually increasing in output and frequency, and soon after, a power outage and containment breach occurred at the site where the autopsy took place. Following these events, the body of SCP-715-B7 disappeared, and video surveillance confirmed that several members of Foundation staff were responsible, all of whom had been involved in SCP-715 research. The staff members escaped with the body and left no other evidence behind, save for a single photo with the ominous text, "My ears that I may hear, my eyes that I may see, my mouth that I may speak. Do not touch my face." No other information regarding SCP-715 has been found, and many questions remain. Just what are instances of 715-B, and what do they want? Are they some kind of hive mind colony that reproduces through the use of a mysterious photo booth? What happens to those left behind in the pit? And what will they do should they ever get out?
A man is lying in a hospital bed, and it is clear that he is not doing well. A group of doctors buzz around him performing various tests, checking his vital signs again and again. The man feels weak and a little disoriented, and the looks on the various doctors' faces tells him all he needs to know. Something is very wrong with him. Finally, there is a break in the commotion, and the doctors stop prodding at him and peering into his eyes with a bright, blinding light. All of the doctors and nurses leave the room except for one. The doctor steps towards the man and tells him that he has some bad news. You see, before the doctor can finish, someone else emerges from the shadows in the corner of the room and taps him on the shoulder. "I'll handle this." The man hadn't noticed this person, but he can see now that he's dressed in a suit, and unlike the doctors, he doesn't have any identifying items like a name tag or badge. Maybe he's some kind of professor, or a renowned surgeon who is going to tell him how they will make him better. The doctor steps back from the bed, but the man in the suit tells the doctor that it would be best if he and the patient could be left alone. Just for a moment, of course. The doctor nods in agreement and leaves the room. The man in the suit waits until the door is closed behind him to continue. He tells the sick man that he has a rare condition, quite rare. So rare, in fact, that you're the only person to ever have it, the only recorded case in history. The man in the suit sits down on the bed next to the man and takes his hand, lifting it up, examining it. The man's hand is an odd color. It has a slight green tint to it, and the skin itself appears to be taking on a fibrous quality. The sick man feels very tired, but he manages to whisper, "Are you a doctor? Are you going to help me?" The man in the suit responds, "Yes, I'm a doctor. Of sorts. A doctor and a researcher. I work for a very important organization, and I specialize in cases just like yours. Well, not exactly like yours. You're unique. Quite special, in fact." The sick man offers a weak smile. "I'm very lucky." "Oh yes, very lucky indeed. Well, not because of your condition, of course, but because I am here."
You see, if it's all right with you, we'd like for you to come with us, to come stay at one of our facilities for a while. We can't promise that we'll be able to figure out exactly what's happening or why. But if we can, we have a much better chance of figuring out how to cure it. To cure you, so you can go back to a normal life. Do I have much of a choice? The sick man asks. Of course you do. It's completely up to you. I think this would be your best course of action, your best by far in fact, but we can't force you to do anything you don't want to do. The sick man looks down at his greenish hand again, turning it over in front of his face, examining the small growths that seem to be sprouting from his skin. When do we leave? Right now, the man in the suit tells him. The nurses will come get you ready, and then we'll be on our way. The man in the suit leaves the room and closes the door behind him. Standing next to the door in the hallway are a pair of men wearing tactical uniforms like a SWAT team. The man in the suit tells them that luckily they won't be needed today. This one is coming easy. The sick man lies on a bed, but now he is in a new room. This one is even more sterile than the hospital, with cold concrete walls and harsh fluorescent lights. Just like in the hospital, he's surrounded by a seemingly never-ending cast of doctors, nurses, and researchers. They too poke and prod at him, take samples, and administer all kinds of tests. As time goes on, the man's condition only grows worse. It seems there's nothing that they can do to stop his condition from advancing. The green color spreads across his body, and his skin soon becomes woody and stiff. If he sits in one place for too long without moving, tiny fibers emerge from his skin, like probing roots looking for soil. All the while, the man grows weaker and more fragile. Even the slightest movement seems to cause him great pain. The doctor who originally brought the man to the facility gathers with a small group in the observation room next to the man's containment cell. They discuss the results of a recent test, which showed that much of the melanin in his skin has somehow been replaced with chlorophyll, and that the fibrous quality of his skin is being caused by the appearance of cellulose around his cells. In other words, he isn't just starting to look like a plant. He's truly becoming a plant. And there doesn't seem to be anything they can do to stop it. Try as they might, they haven't found a single clue as to what is causing the man's condition, or how to treat it. The man, though, seems strangely at peace with his fate. He's told that they're going to allow him to live, whether that be as a man or as a plant in containment, for as long as he can stay alive, and that he will be well taken care of to make the whole process as comfortable for him as possible. Even though they failed to find a cure for his anomalous disease, they will do everything in their power to make sure he doesn't suffer. A tragic yet familiar tale for the SCP Foundation. A normal person is subjected to an abnormal situation that completely changes their life, and not for the better. At least in this situation, the Foundation appears to have shown a rare glimpse of their own humanity, opting to make this safe class anomaly's existence as painless as possible, rather than force it to endure a lifetime of painful tests and studies. Or at least that's what you've been led to believe. Unfortunately, everything you've just seen about SCP-1500 is a lie. Those with Level 3 clearance, though, can learn the truth, which is that SCP-1500 is actually an extremely dangerous anomaly, whose true identity must be hidden from even the majority of the Foundation, for reasons you'll soon learn. SCP-1500 is not a man suffering from a condition that causes him to slowly transform into a plant-like being, but is actually a greenish-gray, smooth-skinned humanoid with no facial features at all. Its limbs are long and multi-jointed, and its abdomen is highly distended. The skin is exceptionally durable and tough, and though SCP-1500 has no visible sense organs like ears or a nose, it still appears to possess senses that are roughly equivalent to an average human's. The entity is incapable of speech, owing to its lack of a mouth, and it has not shown a need to eat, breathe, or sleep at all. In addition to the strange appearance of SCP-1500, its primary anomalous effect is the impact it has on any human that comes within its line of sight, or rather what would be its line of sight if it had any eyes. Those that do find that they will soon begin experiencing headaches, nausea, and an overwhelming sense of dread. These symptoms will increase over the next several minutes, with the headaches becoming more and more debilitating, and the feelings of nausea and fear growing until eventually the subject passes out. They will remain unconscious for roughly 15 seconds, after which they will awaken and claim to have no memory of ever being exposed to SCP-1500. But something else strange also happens to the subject after waking. When asked to describe the creature known as SCP-1500, they will no longer remark on its faceless head or long twisted limbs. Instead, they will describe the creature as being an average-looking Caucasian male. Even stranger is that to them, it now has a name, Zachary Callahan. In further interviews with subjects exposed to SCP-1500, It became clear that many of their memories had been reshaped to now include the entity in its human-looking Zachary Callahan form. They would often describe him as a close friend from childhood or early adulthood, and one that played a significant role in their lives. They also claim that they are perfectly capable of communicating with Zachary Callahan, able to carry on conversations with him, while all the observing researchers will see is an apparently one-sided conversation between the subject and the featureless gray-skinned creature. While Foundation personnel have found that they are able to remove the false memories from the subject's minds through the use of amnestics, they have yet to be able to reverse the effect that causes the subject to see SCP-1500 as a human being, and everyone who has been exposed continues to see the entity as Zachary Callahan forevermore. It is still unknown what kind of long-term effects this exposure may have or how dangerous to their mental or physical health it will turn out to be. Even more concerning is that evidence has emerged that SCP-1500 may be able to affect more than just those in its immediate presence. Recently, a United States senator was giving a televised speech on a rather uninteresting topic. The speech started out normal enough, but then the senator began to relay an anecdote about a childhood fishing trip he had taken with a friend. You won't be surprised to learn that according to the senator, the friend's name was none other than Zachary Callahan. Investigations into the senator's background concluded that there was no person by that name of the appropriate age in the area where he grew up. It was also discovered the senator had suffered an especially bad migraine at a dinner party the week before the speech. Further research into SCP-1500's memory-altering effects have also revealed that they might just be more intrusive than first believed. Rather than simply appearing as an old friend, subjects exposed to 1500 have begun to report that Zachary Callahan actually played a much more prominent role in their lives, either as a close relative, a parental figure, or even a former lover. In each of these cases, the subjects described their feelings for Zachary Callahan as ones of adoration, and that he made them feel protected and loved. Most troubling of all is a recent addendum to the SCP-1500 file, which describes the very latest research on the anomaly and its effects. It is now estimated that as many as 23,000 people all across the world have been affected by the creature, with the idea of Zachary Callahan implanted into their memories. It is unknown why it is trying to spread its influence so far and wide, but one clue that may point to a nefarious purpose is that it seems to be disproportionately targeting political and military figures, as well as SCP Foundation personnel. Following these new developments, classification of SCP-1500 to Keter was requested and granted. Due to the risk that SCP-1500 poses through its anomalous effects, and its powerful ability to influence those in positions of great power, it is permanently kept in a modified humanoid containment cell at Site-17. No personnel are allowed to enter into its containment chamber under any circumstances, nor are there security cameras in its cell. A false containment document describing a human male with an anomalous plant-like effect was placed in the database in order to deter further investigation into the real SCP-1500. And any personnel who experience painful, persistent headaches are immediately transferred away from Site-17, while any who attempt to breach containment are immediately terminated. Is SCP-1500 planting the seeds for something big by infiltrating the minds of some of the most influential people on Earth? Or is it merely looking for a connection, as it takes on a form that it wishes it could have, in the only way it can, inside an imagination? Perhaps one day, we will know the answer.
The boy screams as his body transforms. His bones warp and twist as feathers emerge from his pores, and his skull sharpens into a long, hard beak. He's in a living nightmare. And who could have guessed it all started with an innocent attempt to play hooky? It's an ordinary Monday morning, and all over town, children are waking up and reluctantly dragging themselves out of bed for school. Some are oversleeping, hitting the snooze on their alarms, and getting a bit of extra shut-eye before their exhausted parents notice, wake them up, and rush to get them to school before the first morning bell. In one particular bedroom, a young boy is awake but still in bed, brainstorming as fast as he can. He is determined to skip school today however he can. He usually doesn't mind school very much, but today, all he can think about is the math test he didn't study for, and the mean classmate who likes to knock his books out of his hands. But he can't just ask to skip school for no reason. He has to come up with a plan. He runs to the bathroom, splashing hot water in his face to give him a flushed appearance and a warm forehead. Then he hops back into bed and begins to loudly cough and sniffle until his mother comes to check on him. He complains that he doesn't feel well enough to go to school, and, sure enough, when his mother feels his forehead, it is hot to the touch. She agrees to let him stay home from school for the day, provided he stays in bed and gets plenty of rest. He promises that he will, and she leaves to go to work. On her way to work, the boy's mother remembers that there isn't much for him to eat while he's home alone all day. At least, there isn't much that he would want to eat while he's sick. She decides that she can be a little bit late to work for the sake of her son's health, and pulls into a nearby grocery store. She rushes out of her car and into the store, making a beeline for the soup aisle. She reaches for her usual go-to brand of chicken noodle soup, but finds the shelf completely bare. That's right, it's flu season. Of course, the soup is sold out. Oh great, this is exactly what she needs. A sick kid at home, 1 can of chicken noodle soup left at the store, and the machine won't even scan it. She smacks the side of the machine in frustration, and the screen reads invalid code, transaction cancelled. With a heavy sigh, she glances over her shoulder. No one is watching. She tried to pay for the can to do the right thing, but the machine wouldn't let her. So she grabs the can and runs out of the store before anyone can spot her. While his mother is out, the boy is at home raiding the pantry for snacks to sate his not at all sick appetite. He fills up on Oreos and toaster pastries, cheesy crackers, and chips. When he hears his mother's car pulling into the driveway, he quickly wipes the crumbs from his face and jumps back into bed, just in time for his mother to find him there, resting like he promised he would. She gives him a kiss on the forehead and tells him that she'll heat up some chicken noodle soup for him to eat. She's in a hurry to make it to work, though, so she'll need to leave it in the microwave for him. She pours the contents of the soup into a bowl, adds a bit of water, and pops the bowl into the microwave for a few minutes. She calls up to her son, letting him know that the soup will be ready when the microwave dings. Then she rushes out the door and heads to work for the day, confident that her son will be fine through her shift. If he happens to need anything, he can call her and let her know. The boy hears the microwave ding, but his stomach is too full from his rummage through the pantry for him to want any of the soup, in spite of its heavenly aroma. Instead, he creeps into the living room and sits down to play video games until his eyes start to hurt. As he boots up his gaming system, he thinks for a moment that he can hear a strange noise coming from the kitchen, a soft, clucking sound, like the chickens he saw on his grandparents' farm. But he quickly forgets about the sound as the screen lights up, and he disappears into the world of his favorite game. He plays for hours, until the grumbling of his stomach interrupts his concentration. He's suddenly very hungry, and remembers the soup his mother left in the microwave. It is certainly cold and unappealing by now, but he can just reheat it first. He punches the buttons on the microwave and waits for the soup to be ready. Again, he can hear strange noises coming from the microwave, but he doesn't think anything of it. The microwave dings, and he pulls out the bowl of soup, grabs a spoon, and digs in. A little while later, the boy's mother pulls into the driveway in a panic. She left work early when her phone rang with a call from her son. She answered, asking what was wrong, but he wouldn't answer her. All she could hear on the other end was rustling, heavy breathing, and some pained grunting. Fearing the worst, she drove back as fast as she could, running several red lights along the way. Now she fumbles with her keys as she unlocks the door, terrified of what she will find. She grips her phone in her other hand, thumb hovering over the buttons, ready to dial 911 if the situation calls for it. She pushes the front door open, calling her son's name. He doesn't answer, and her stomach drops. Suddenly, she hears the loud thud of something heavy being knocked to the ground. Something is terribly wrong here, and even though she might find her worst nightmare, she has to face whatever is waiting for her inside. She runs into the kitchen and finds it a mess. The bowl of soup is shattered on the floor, congealed, cold soup pooling on the tile. The kitchen table is turned over on its side. The kitchen chairs are in disarray. But the strangest sight is the dozens of tiny, white, fluffy things on the floor, counters, and furniture. She picks one up for a closer look and finds herself even more confused than before. It's a feather. They're all feathers. She calls her son's name again, praying for a response. This time, she receives one, though not the one she hopes for. She hears the sound of shuffling footsteps up above, followed by a strangled sound like a scream caught in someone's throat. She sprints up the stairs as fast as her legs can carry her, throwing open the door to her son's bedroom. There, she finds him. But this is not the bright-eyed boy that she left behind when she left for work. His arms are covered with a thick layer of white feathers, the same feathers that are beginning to poke through the skin of his face. The top of his head has elongated into a floppy comb of excess skin, the same sort of excess skin that is wobbling below his chin. And his mouth, it doesn't look like a mouth anymore. It's pointed and hard, and his lips click together when he speaks, or rather, clucks.
His bare feet are scaly and red, with claws protruding from his toes. He flaps his wings frantically, eyes wide and wild, clucking and running back and forth across the room. When he looks at her, she does not see recognition in his gaze. Her son, her beloved boy, has turned into a chicken. Unable to do anything else, the mother calls an ambulance. At first, the paramedics that arrive on the scene think the call was some sort of elaborate prank, but when they set eyes on the boy, they agree that something truly bizarre is going on. They speed to the hospital with the chicken boy in tow, but sadly are unable to save his life. The mother turns over the can of the mysterious soup to the authorities, who launch a formal investigation. Unfortunately, they are unable to trace the can to any store, nor are they able to verify the existence of the company name on its label. Employees of the grocery store where she found the can insist that they have never seen it in their lives. Several weeks after this incident occurred, the SCP Foundation conducted a raid on a New York office of Marshall, Carter, and Dark. For those of you unfamiliar with the organization, and that is most of the general population by design, Marshall, Carter, and Dark Ltd. is an extremely powerful multinational corporation founded by 3 individuals with those surnames, specializing in the acquisition and sale of anomalous items, entities, and experiences. To put it simply, they run the largest anomalous black market in the world and are the crime bosses of the paranormal world. During this particular raid, SCP Foundation operatives recovered 17 different unusual items. Among the items discovered was a shipping crate recently delivered by the Federal Postal Service from an invalid return address. This crate contained 103 cans of SCP-2057, as well as a copy of a letter written to one of the company's associates. So far, the letter has not been traced to an address. It reads, "Dear Cyrus, Maria has told me of the unfortunate circumstances that have befallen your children. I'd hoped to hear about the improvement of their condition soon. As their godfather, I am extremely distressed to hear this. Having experienced a child suffering from the measles myself, I know how terrifying it can be when it seems as if they are getting worse. Recently, we received a shipment of something that I hope can help your family. There is a crate in the storage area marked with Wondertainment, discontinued item. It will not be there long, as it goes to auction next week. I will leave a key under the photo of your family on your desk. Follow the instructions exactly. Do not, under any circumstances, do anything different than what is directed on the can. Destroy this message as soon as possible. I do not want any of this to come back on us. Be careful, my friend. Williams." SCP-2057 consists of 92 318 milliliter cans of condensed chicken noodle soup. Each can is covered with a brightly colored label depicting images of noodles, a cartoon chicken, and dancing vegetables. In addition to this inviting imagery, each label is emblazoned with the text, "Dr. Wondertainment's Ultralicious Chicken Noodle Soup for Kids." Each can has a pull-top lid for easy opening and is printed with a set of nutrition facts, ingredients, and instructions for heating. The nutrition facts are as follows: calories, 95, fat, 3.17 grams, carbohydrates, 2.2 grams, protein, 13.48 grams, vitamin W, 2 grams, and mother's love, 10 grams. The SCP Foundation attempted to analyze the contents of the soup in order to compare it to the posted nutrition facts. The calories, fat, carbohydrates, and protein were found to be accurately reported. Vitamin W was present in the reported amount as well, though it was not a compound that the Foundation scientists had ever encountered before. Mother's love, as it is an intangible concept, was not able to be identified or measured in the analyzed soup samples. The ingredients are listed as ultralicious chicken stock, enriched Chinese egg noodles, finest cooked chicken breast, farm fresh carrots, crispy crunchy celery, sweet Vidalia onions, no paint thinner, fresh mountain spring water, vitamin W. Contains less than 2% of the following ingredients: a pinch of salt, a smidgen of chicken fat, sprinkle of spice extracted from rare plants, a dash of high-quality unicorn tears. The instructions for heating read, "Hey kids, feeling sick, icky, or downright yucky? Just pop open a can of Dr. Wondertainment's Ultralicious Chicken Noodle Soup for Kids. Place contents of the can in a medium-sized soup pot. Add a can of water, stir, and heat. Watch as the fun begins. Eat hearty, and you'll feel better and ready to play with Dr. Wondertainment toys in no time." All of this is relatively straightforward, give or take a few unusual ingredients. Someone taking only a quick look might mistake a can of this soup for any other chicken noodle soup. However, it does have something that most ordinary canned soup does not: a warning label. Dr. Wondertainment's Ultralicious Chicken Noodle Soup for Kids is intended to be eaten while it is hot to make you feel better in no time at all. Do not consume after it has become cold. Do not reheat. By purchasing from Dr. Wondertainment, you agree to not hold Dr. Wondertainment or any of Dr. Wondertainment's affiliates accountable for injuries or damages incurred by your product. Thank you for purchasing from Dr. Wondertainment. So what exactly is in a can of Dr. Wondertainment's Ultralicious Chicken Noodle Soup for Kids? Well, when the SCP Foundation first opened a can to take a look, they found that it was filled with condensed chicken broth and a mass of egg noodles shaped like an egg. When water was added and the contents of the can were heated to a temperature of 70 degrees Celsius, the noodle-based egg hatched. Inside was a small domesticated chicken made up of egg noodles, carrot, celery, onion, and cooked chicken breast. For simplicity's sake, this chicken noodle soup chicken is referred to as SCP-2057-1. As the Foundation researchers continued to heat the broth to a higher temperature, SCP-2057-1 began to move around, make audible chirping sounds, and eat the broth. As it ate, it grew larger and larger until it reached a mass of 85 grams and resembled a miniature adult chicken. At a temperature between 35 and 70 degrees Celsius, SCP-2057-1 behaved much like an ordinary chicken. It continued to behave normally even as it was consumed or cut apart, apparently feeling no pain or awareness of its situation. Dissection of SCP-2057-1 revealed that its insides were made up of soup ingredients, including celery and onion bones, cooked chicken breast muscles, carrot beak and legs, and chicken broth blood. When SCP-2057-1's temperature dropped below 35 degrees Celsius, it stopped moving and collapsed into the soup. At a temperature below 20 degrees Celsius, it became congealed and unappetizing. With these observations completed, the Foundation then attempted to measure the effects of this unusual chicken soup on a person that ingested it. When test subjects were fed samples of the soup at a temperature between 35 and 70 degrees Celsius, they had a very positive experience. The soup's taste was described as excellent, delicious, and homey. Though the meal caused a bit of psychological distress due to the soup chicken's realistic appearance and behavior, it improved every test subject's physical well-being. This eventually applied to test subjects with a case of influenza, measles, or the common cold. Following consumption of SCP-2057, each subject with a diagnosed illness of this kind reported immediate relief from their symptoms, including fever, aches and pains, cough, and congestion. With this positive, if a bit disturbing, effect documented, the Foundation next set out to determine what would happen if they let the soup get cold before it was eaten. Test subjects served this version of the soup had a far worse experience, describing the taste of their meal as bland, disgusting, and repulsive. 67% of the test subjects experienced cramps, chills, and diarrhea following their consumption of the soup, and 62% found themselves making involuntary clucking noises, as well as experiencing a strong aversion to poultry products. Again, several test subjects were deliberately selected based on their cases of influenza, measles, and the common cold. These test subjects immediately began to develop troubling symptoms, including the growth of pin feathers on their forearms, loosened excess skin on their heads and under their chins, a change in their ability to walk normally, and distressing hallucinations of being hung upside down by the ankles. Following these 2 rounds of testing, the research team decided to see why exactly the warning label advised against reheating the soup. D-Class 45782 was selected as the test subject for this particular experiment, and was instructed to reheat a bowl of cooled SCP-2057-1 in a microwave on high for 2 minutes and 30 seconds. Then, he was to consume the reheated soup and report his experience to a camera placed in the room with him. As instructed, D-45782 microwaved the bowl of soup. As it heated in the microwave, it emitted unintelligible vocalizations in a deep voice. After removing the bowl from the microwave, D-45782 noted that it was gelatinous-looking, with blackened burnt bits around the edges. He took 3 bites of the disgusting, hot and cold at the same time mixture before spitting it out onto the floor and refusing to eat another bite. 15 minutes after tasting the reheated soup, D-45872 began to exhibit significant distress, clucking angrily into the camera. 5 minutes later, D-45872 became more difficult to understand, clucks and other chicken-like vocalizations making up most of his attempted speech. He began scratching vigorously at his arms to the point of drawing blood. Loose skin could be seen gathering on the top of his head and under his neck. 6 minutes later, D45872 had lost the ability to speak. Large white pin feathers had sprouted from his arms, covering the skin, and smaller white feathers were beginning to sprout from his face. After 16 more minutes passed, D45872 began attacking other objects in the room, attempting to destroy the microwave, knocking the bowl of soup to the floor, and flipping over a table and chair. He had grown feathers over 67% of his skin, and his face had begun to change drastically. His nasal area was elongated and hardened, joining with his lower jaw in an appendage resembling a bird's beak. His upper lip had disappeared into his nasal cavity. Only 5 minutes later, D45872 suddenly stopped moving and collapsed to the floor, dead. Following D45872's death, an autopsy was performed. These were the findings. Autopsy revealed D45782's cause of death was due to extreme and sudden physical change of internal organs, resulting in shock and cardiac arrest. 93% of the subject's skin was covered in feathers. Physical changes in the face resulted in a beak-like alteration of the nose and mouth. Loose skin under the neck and on the top of the head resemble a wattle and comb. Subject's lower legs were found to be covered in thick, scaly skin, with the toes of the subject's feet ending in small, rounded claws. The subject and instance of SCP-2057-1 were incinerated after testing and autopsy. Whenever not being used for approved experimentation, all cans of SCP-2057 must be stored in a standard, large-volume storage locker in Containment Area 27 and kept at a temperature of 25 degrees Celsius. Because SCP-2057 is in limited supply, all experiments must first be approved by at least 2 personnel with 2-1103 clearance, as well as receiving the go-ahead from Dr. Applegate. There are still 41 cans of Dr. Wondertainment's chicken soup unaccounted for, and the Foundation has been unable to track them down so far. Who knows where they ended up? Maybe at another office of Marshall Carter and Dark. Or maybe, just maybe, one made its way onto the shelves at your local grocery store. Best to be careful out there. When you're feeling sick, hungry, or in need of a little pick-me-up, there's nothing quite like a steaming hot bowl of chicken noodle soup. Just make sure to read the label carefully and always follow the printed instructions. If you ignore them, you might just find that your chickens have come home to roost. After all, as the saying goes, you are what you eat. Check out the DrBob Patreon and become a junior researcher today. Now go and watch another entry from the files of DrBob, like SCP-1550, Dr. Wondertainment's custom pets.